See that? Council. Okay. I'll call to order this public hearing for College Township, Thursday, December 19th, for Crew 814 Planned Residential Development. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just as an announcement, council did meet in executive session prior to this meeting for personnel matters. Okay, we ready to get going?
I think so. Yeah, I'm just going to introduce Louis Glantz, the College Township solicitor, is going to give a brief introduction about why we're here and why we're conducting these particular public hearings at this time. And he will be able to fill in a little bit of the background so that we can move forward this evening. So, Louis?
Good evening. Tonight we're going to have a conditional use hearing on a conditional use permit for the multifamily residential uses in the Planned Research and Business Park District, PRPBD. And later in the meeting, there'll be a discussion also of the Crew 814 Planned Residential Development Plan, because that's related directly to what the conditional use might, if granted, would be for. Now, I want to bring up at the beginning that the applicant will be presenting an overview of the application and what's planned, and council will, of course, have opportunity to make questions. And because it is a public hearing, anyone can make comments or questions. However, I wanted to point out and suggest even that the meeting tonight is going to be just to give an overview. This is really the first night that it's been in council's hands to look at, and we're going to reconvene at a later date, and there's 3 dates that council will pick later in the meeting, and you can, the applicant can comment on these too. January 16th, February 6th, or February 20th, and I think one of those is beyond the 45 days, but we could, you could write a letter and say that that's acceptable. Beyond that, what I'm going to do next in this hearing is turn it over to the applicant, and they're going to present an overview of the plan and what's involved.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Sir. I'm an attorney with Stevens & Lee out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I'm here representing the applicant Burgundy Development. Just as a brief overview, they're the equitable owner of approximately 48-acre tract of land at 1001 Shiloh Road within College Township. The property is currently undeveloped, and it's within your Planned Research and Business Park District. The project that we are proposing is a mixed-use residential development consisting of approximately 623 residential units with a mixture of townhomes and apartments, including residential amenities and some limited commercial as a potential. So the application that we have is for a multi-family residential use, which is permitted by conditional use as a planned residential development, or a PRD. You're going to be hearing that term this evening as we go forward. So there are really 2 separate components for the ultimate approval, even though we're not going to get a vote tonight, that you're looking for. The first is really the conditional use application, and that really focuses on the appropriateness of the multifamily residential use on the proposed site. And that's, of course, the evidentiary hearing that we are opening up right now. The second component is really on the PRD tentative plan that comes forth. And that really focuses in on the design and the layout of the development. And it's very similar to a preliminary land development plan. That's going to come next. And that's part of the public hearing as opposed to the evidentiary hearing that we are currently having right now. And at that time, we're going to have questions and answers, and the public can make comment based upon the PRD that is going to be presented as we go forth. So remember, the 2 different components that we have here: conditional use, really on the multifamily use, whether it's appropriate, and then we have the PRD. So stepping back a little bit, we were before the Planning Commission several times. Our engineering team was there, I believe, 3 or 4 meetings, and they have worked with staff since the application was filed to really hone down the development and the development plans to clean up the conditions, all the little ticky-tacky items that could be in there that need to be cleaned up on most applications. And that has been done. And then 2 days ago, on Tuesday, the Planning Commission actually recommended approval of both the conditional use as well as the tentative PRD plan, subject to some outstanding comments and notations that came from township staff, many of which were really applicable to the final PRD plan, which will be forthcoming sometime in the future. So really, we're going to try to go everything moving along fairly quickly. We have one witness tonight, Ron Borger. He's the project manager at Pantera. He's right behind me. He's the primary witness. So he's going to be going through the conditional use application and some of the standards that are there. We also have 2 other people here where really they're available to answer questions, maybe something that Ron can't answer. We have John Sepp in the blue shirt, the PE owner of Pantera. He is here also. And we also have Matt Flickinger, who is the Vice President of Land Acquisition for Burkentine Development. He's available for more of a Q&A as it relates to the ownership and the operation of the completed development. I do have some exhibit binders that I'm going to be handing out, and we're going to be going through these. Dorsey's out. Yep.
Or Dustin.
All right.
Thanks.
Oh, no, make sure council has it.
Thanks.
So we just handed out exhibit binders. It looks a little more impressive than what it actually you're going to see as we get through the hearing. There's a lot of paperwork. We're not going to be going through all the documents in detail. However, it's important as part of the conditional use process that we actually get documents into the record. So for a complete application and a complete hearing, it's important that we do that. So we're going to rely primarily on putting these documents into the record as opposed to having a lot of oral testimony explaining everything that's in there. But we will go through them relatively quickly as we move through the hearing. Sorry for Ron. Want to swear me?
Ms. Burglar, if you raise your right hand, please, I need to swear you in. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give me truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Does that help you God?
I do.
Hey, Ron, can you just state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Ron Porter,
Where do you work?
Pantera Engineering,
What do you do there?
Senior Project Manager.
And what does that involve?
Basically overseeing the projects, kind of working with the development team, the engineering team, ranging from designers, environmental folks, basically spearheading the project, making sure it keeps on task and in scope and kind of sticking with the budget. So.
And how long have you been at Pantera?
Pantera for 1 year.
All right. And are you familiar with the site and surrounding area for the application tonight?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the ordinance standards for both the conditional use as well as the PRD?
Yes.
And the application plans that were submitted, were you involved in the preparation of those plans and the applications?
Yes, I was.
And are you authorized to speak on behalf of the applicant?
Yes.
All right, good. All right, so let's just breeze through some of the exhibits, and we're not going to go in any order. Unfortunately, my numbering system didn't work out very well this morning. So we have a couple resumes in here. Just want to get in the record. We're going to start on exhibit number 12.
Is that tab 12? Normal? Tab 12?
Identify that. Is that your resume?
Yes, it is.
Accurately reflect your work experience?
Yes.
All right. Let's go to exhibit number 13 then. What's this?
That is John Stepp's resume.
So Mr. Sepp there, the owner of Pantera, that's his background, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's go to exhibit number 9. And can you identify what that is?
Yes, that's Matt's resume.
have more of a kind of description of what it does at Burgundy, correct? Excellent. Let's go to what I've marked as exhibit number 10. There. What do we have here?
Yes, this is the notification for the public hearing.
All right, so Pet Terra was required to publish this, public notice within the newspaper, advertising this to the public that it would be open, and there would be a hearing tonight, correct?
Correct.
All right. Okay, let's go to exhibit number 11, and can you identify what that is? There's a series of sheets here, and then we have some notices in the back. What's this?
Yes, these are notifications to the surrounding property owners that surround the PRD property.
So this is a requirement of the ordinance that these letters were sent out? Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, then we flip towards the end of exhibit number 11. There appear to be some certified mail receipts. So these were all sent out by certified mail?
That is correct.
And again, that's a requirement of the ordinance that the developer does that, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Let's go now to the very beginning. And I know we're moving a little fast here, but we got exhibit number 1. All right, can you identify what this is?
Yes, that is the agreement of sale between Burkentine, the development group, and the property owner.
All right, so this is the agreement for the property that's subject to the application, correct?
Correct.
And as far as you're aware, is that agreement still in full force and effect?
Yes.
Let's go to mark this exhibit number 2. You can identify what this is.
Yes, that is the current deed of the parcel as it exists right now.
And again, the current owners are who?
Terry Rogers and Kimberly Packer.
And that lines up with the people who are within the agreement of sale, correct?
Correct.
All right, let's go to mark this number 3. Can you identify what that is?
Yes, that is the Crew 814, the project narrative for the PRD.
All right, and so there was a revision date in December noted on there, correct?
Correct.
And what was being revised at that time?
We added additional information pertaining to workforce housing.
And that was based on discussions with staff or the planning commission, correct?
That is correct.
All right, so that really sets forth all the details of what's happening on this development, how it's going to operate, how it fits in, you got workforce housing and those type of things. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, let's go to what I've marked as exhibit number 4, and we're finally getting to something that looks like a development.
That is correct.
Can you identify what this is?
Yes, this is a rendering that we put together outlining the PRD, the PRD development.
Okay, again, this was prepared for you?
Yes, correct.
All right. Then, we're going to get back to that, but let's go down to the next exhibit, which is exhibit number 5. Can you identify what that is?
Yeah, these are the PRD plans that we had submitted and revised to the township. They are dated December 9th, 2024.
All right, and there are apparently 28 sheets on here?
That is correct.
So these are detailed plans, which are really running, essentially, as a preliminary land development plan, correct?
Correct.
It has that level of detail in it.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail in these plans, so.
Okay. So I want to go back now to exhibit number 4, which has a nice overview of the project. So let's now talk a little bit about what's being proposed within this project. If you could describe what's going in there. First of all, how large is the area?
Sure. So the property is 48, roughly 48 acres. We're essentially breaking up the property into several areas. We're going to have fee simple townhomes, approximately 64 units. We're going to have townhome rental units, roughly 55. We're going to have 2 apartment buildings right against the Shiloh Road. The grayed out area in the upper left corner will be a larger apartment complex, a series of 7 buildings in that area. And the upper right quadrant will be future commercial reserved area.
Now, in the middle, there appears to be something, there's like a blue little area. What's going on there?
Sure, that is the community recreation area. So we felt that is a great, centralized location for the PRD.
Okay. And is there a single point of access onto Shiloh?
There is a single point of access, actually coming off of Shiloh, and then there's also a continuation and extension of Pleasant Point Drive.
So we actually have 2 points of ingress and egress into the development, is that right?
Correct.
All right. And what about stormwater? Has that generally been laid out on here?
Yes, so we have two stormwater management areas, basically up in the upper right corner and the upper left corner. These have been tested. We had geotechs on site. We did all the infiltration testing, so those will be the stormwater management locations.
And are they currently sized for just the development of Phase 1, or are they sized for the entire development?
Entire development.
Okay. Now, what about the road network that's being proposed, particularly the entrance drives and the connections? Is that being sized for just Phase 1 or the entire development?
So the main thoroughfare coming up from Shiloh Road, that's going to be a boulevard-style entrance. So right now, the proposal is we're looking at and working with a traffic consultant for the ultimate sizing of that intersection. But that's going to be the main thoroughfare, the main entrance to the development. And again, working on the HOP plans, that'll be part of the final plans. The secondary point is, like I mentioned, is a continuation of Pleasant Point Drive. And that's a roadway design per township standards.
And is there going to be workforce housing as part of the development?
There is. We're providing roughly about 10%, which equates to about 62 units of workforce housing. And they're going to be interspersed between the various kind of sections of the development. So we'll have X amount in the fee simple townhome area, X amount in the townhome rentals, and then they're going to be dispersed between the apartments as well.
And the details of that, that's within really the full plan set. We'll get to that when we have the public hearing.
That is correct.
Okay, but there is workforce housing, and that's really an important component of this project, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And it was important for the developer to do that, even though it was a requirement of the ordinance, but they're certainly glad to do that and feel that it's important to put that in here. All right?
That is correct.
All right. Now, I had mentioned in my intro that the project was before the Township Planning Commission. Were you here presenting the plan?
Yes, I was.
And how many times were you here?
I think I was here maybe four times. We did have a pre-submittal application meeting. That was, I think, back in the summer, maybe. So we had that. So I've been to several, planning commission meetings, a lot of favorable reviews. So yeah, I think this is a very, very good project and seems to be, something that will fit within this area.
And based upon those the reviews, did you take the comments and then make plan revisions and clean up items? Is that what was happening?
We did, yes. The first submission, I believe the first township review comments was roughly maybe 85 comments. And then through revising the plans, resubmitting those plans, the latest submission, we were able to get those township comments down to roughly 2 little, what I'm going to call small note-related items. But yeah, I think we really cleaned up the comment letters well, and we worked with staff, and yeah, so
You
that's
did that.
good.
All right.
Mhm.
Well, that's a good segue because let's go to what I marked as exhibit number 6. I'll flip over here. And can you identify what this is?
Yes, this is the December 13th review letter by College Township.
All right, so this is, when you had mentioned you were able to essentially whittle down the comments, this is the end product, is that correct?
That is correct.
And this was also presented to the Planning Commission 2 nights ago, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And, we're not gonna go through them, but basically the first 5 here are really, we kind of get to some of the, I'm calling it the soft standards of the conditional use. And then you had mentioned there was 2 additional comments, that's really number 8 and 9 in the back, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Which are basically just adding several notes to the plan.
Right. And again, a lot of these comments really go to the details of the PRD plan, not necessarily the conditional use, correct?
That is correct.
All right, and then, just so everyone's clear, this is just what's called a tentative PRD plan, right?
That is correct.
There will be a final plan that gets submitted, and it'll get reviewed again, and any comments in here that might be related to the final plan, and there may be some additional ones that come in, that'll be an opportunity for staff to review, comment on, you may have to revise it based upon those comments, correct?
That is correct. That'll be part of the final plan
Okay.
preparation.
All right, so let's try to leave the plan details for right now, because we're going to go to we'll have the public hearing, and we're going to go through all those items. So I want to talk about the actual conditional use standards. And I'm just going to pull the ordinance out. I guess, first of all, are you familiar with the conditional use standards?
Yes.
All right. So, now, so everyone's clear, a conditional use is actually a permitted use within the zoning ordinance, and it's a permitted use provided any standards in the ordinance are demonstrated to be met, and the governing body here has to hold a hearing and determines whether the standards are met. So it's not asking for an exception, it's not asking for a variance, it's actually a permitted use, provided you meet the standards.
You meet the standards.
Okay. And there's really two types of standards that we have here. We have what we call the specific objective standards in the ordinance, and those are the really, as is put in here, the standards set forth with the design details of the PRD, correct? All right. And we're going to cover those as part of the public hearing of the PRD. But the second type of standard is actually called the general standards, and those generally deal with health, safety, welfare type items on here. And the way the ordinance is set up and under the MPC is that when a use is determined to be a conditional use, it is presumed to meet the soft standards because it's been legislatively decided that it goes there. But we still have to present testimony on that to make sure, to give an extra boost just to make sure that we do meet kind of those soft standards within the ordinance. And of course, if there's any objectors or people can comment on it, they have the ability to do that. But there's different evidentiary burdens that they need to come up to, and we don't need to get into that now. So let's go through some of the conditional use soft standards, and I'm going to turn to ordinance section 87-50, which is called Review of Tentative Plan. I turn the page to section 3. And underneath section 3, there's sub A through F. And these are generally considered what I call the soft standards for a conditional use for the multifamily housing that we have in here. It's just this section here. So we're going to go through these standards, and I know there's been some description of this within the narrative, but I want to make sure if you can add some commentary on each one of those. Okay? So let's start off with the first one. So the first standard, number A, talks about whether it's consistent with the adopted township comprehensive plan. Now, does the township have a comprehensive plan?
Yes, they do. Or no. No, they don't.
They don't have one. Okay, well, there maybe is a fluke in the ordinance here, but there are some other plans that are available. I believe there's something with the Center Region has a comp plan, correct?
That is correct.
And there's something with, I get Dale Summit area, there's a plan. All right. Now, did you have the opportunity to review those comp plans?
I actually have, yeah, so we did review those.
And, you know, when we talk about consistency with the comp plan, we're not looking at it, it actually says you could do X right here. It's really general concepts. It's a planning tool. Typically, they're done every 10 years or so. So when you looked at the comp plans and you knew this project and you were designing it, did you find that the project would be generally consistent with the comp plan, or did you see that there was issues?
No, we read through that and we noticed that it is in relation to the comp plan.
All right. Anything specific that might come out, such as workforce housing?
So yeah, so with the workforce housing, that is part of the comp plan. So as I mentioned prior, we are providing workforce housing, 62 units, meeting roughly 10% of the dwelling units that we're providing in this development.
What about the need to provide for a different type of housing that is not student housing, but we're not building McMansions, something along those lines?
Yeah, so I think just looking at the overall growth of the area, it was evident that this area needs multifamily housing. So this is part of where the growth areas are projected.
All right, let's go to the second one here, which talks really about number B. It talks about departure from zoning and subdivision regulations otherwise applicable. Now, of course, the nature of a PRD is that you get to change the zoning and the subdivision. That's what a PRD is all about. But given those standards, have there been any departures from the standards for the PRD that are shown in this plan?
No, I believe we met all these standards.
All right. So you're not asking for any waivers or variances for any of those standards?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Number C deals with common open space. and we seem to have some open areas on there. What's happening on there? If you just look at the plan, there's a big Phase 2 open space area. What's happening with the open space?
Yeah, so as part of the PRD requirements, we are required to provide, I believe it's 30% open space. So we ran through the calculations. We are adhering to that percentage. I will say, by providing workforce housing, we could actually lower that open space percentage, but we are still at the threshold, which is 30%. I don't know the exact acreage offhand, but we are meeting the open space requirements. And along with that open space requirements, there are what's called active open space. So part of that could be like basketball courts or the pool or the clubhouse or any type of walking trail, system within the PRD. So, and we have gathering spaces, we have dog parks, so those are all considered active open space.
Yeah. Let's go to the next, and in that open space, it's either going to be maintained by the developer or an HOA.
That is correct. Mhm.
All right. Number D, it talks about design of the plan, adequacy of public, provision for public services, controls over traffic, and amenities of light, air. Not quite sure what that means, but anyway, there's light, air, recreation, and visual enjoyment. So with some sort of a visual look of this thing, and obviously, if it's a field there now, it's going to look different when it comes forth. But I believe the design is try to have something attractive looking. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. And we do have the vehicular control. You talked about the 2 points of entrance coming in here. And would there generally be a traffic signal on Shiloh Road?
In the final stages of this project, there will be a traffic signal as part of this project.
And again, departing now a little bit, the whole Shiloh Road, it's being studied currently for traffic, but we do expect there to be a traffic light put on the front.
That is correct. Under the Phase 2, it could warrant the signal, and likely will warrant the signal warrant for providing a signal.
And that's the developer's obligation to install that and maintain that, correct?
That is correct.
Right. That's the way the rules go with PennDOT. All right, number 3E. Let's go back to that here. Any impact with light or air or visuals that you can see?
No. As far as light, everything has an open feel to it, rather than trying to cluster everything together. So I think as far as and providing the green spaces and the walking trails, definitely provides a lot of open air type concepts. Yeah.
Okay. Number 3E, we have 2 more to go. All right, 3E here, the relationship of the proposed PRD to the neighborhood which is proposed to be established. Now, obviously, this is something new that's coming in. How do you find that this is going to fit in within the neighborhood and along the Shiloh Road corridor?
Yeah, I think if you look at the overall Shiloh Road road corridor, I mean that area is, it's a growth area, and the projections for that corridor. There's going to be a lot of potential for growth, so I think this is a development that it has easy access to I-99, and then there's also access to local, recreation at Spring Canyon Creek. So it has a lot of advantages at that key location.
Final, the last standard here talks about phase development. Now, we do have 2 major phases with Phase 2, maybe some sub-phases coming in there. And they want to make sure that, everything's done. We don't have Phase 1 and the developer skips town. It never happens here. So what's being done here to make sure that really the whole development gets done here?
Yeah, so right now we have a Phase 1, which is going to be, like I said, the townhome and the community area, and then Phase 2 will be the apartment complexes, and then so working with the Burkentine, they're going to be part of this project, from here, sticking out the course.
And again, I asked the question about, the stormwater. Is that being designed for just Phase 1 or for both phases?
That'll be designed for the entirety of the development.
And the road network also, at least the entrances, is that being designed for Phase 1 or for the whole development?
Actually, for both.
For both?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, with the exception of the intersection at Shiloh, until the HOP and the TIS study's done, we don't know exactly what type of intersection's going to come first.
All right. So we have that extra work the developer's doing, which is part of the incentive to keep them going so they don't lose money on it, that they have sort of partially started some of the work that would require for the later phases, correct?
That's correct.
And I think that's what that standard is going for. All right. So that's the last general standard that we have, which really concludes, really the evidence that we're trying to put in here. So I'm going to ask you your opinion on here. Is it your opinion that we meet the general standards for a multifamily development as a conditional use?
Yes.
And what is your opinion?
Yeah, looking at what the requirements are, we meet the standards. We feel that we've met the standards. So yeah, for the conditional use.
Your answer is yes, right?
Yes, that is correct.
That's good. Okay, that ends the testimony that we have in the conditional use. We would ask that the exhibit binder be put into the record. And then we're really here if there's any question and answer that any members of the board or the public may have.
Do that first. The board.
Questions?
Yeah. Yep. Guys, just flip your mic back on. We'll start with some questions from council. Who wants to start out? Susan?
You would ask.
That's right.
Covered a lot.
I'm sorry, before you start, just remember, you'll have another chance because we're going to reconvene. So don't feel you have to scour the records to come up with all your questions right now.
Maybe more clarification questions, probably. Yeah. Any clarification questions?
No, I don't have questions about the conditional use.
Okay. Rich?
I agree. I don't have any on the conditional use and the tentative plan at this time.
Eric?
Just a couple clarifications. You mentioned, and maybe I misunderstood it, that PRD lets you change the zoning. That's not necessarily true. I mean, the underlying zoning stays the same. You get to massage density and stuff. So.
Yeah, I can clarify that, sir. What I meant by that is that the PRD by its nature, the regulations that they put in there are deviations from what the zoning ordinance otherwise provides, as well as what the subdivision ordinance would provide. Okay. So it creates a separate little district with unique regulations. That's the whole nature of the PRD, to allow for more innovative design.
Oh, yeah. Familiar with that. Just the term change the zoning is a scary term.
No, if I said that, I misspoke.
That's what I heard, but doesn't mean you said it. You mentioned that the developer will install, and this is something for later, but before I forget, developer will install and maintain the eventual traffic signal on Shiloh Road. Don't they usually turn those traffic signals over to us?
Yeah, ultimately, the township will actually maintain the signal, but we will receive it from the developer once it's been constructed and completed.
Those were the only clarifying
Okay.
questions I had.
I don't have anything for clarification. Do you, Tracy?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the same request from anybody from the public that wants to comment or ask questions, you're welcome to do so, or you can wait and do so at the next hearing, which will be in a few weeks. And oh, by the way, and if you do, you have to come up to the microphone and state your name.
Don't you have a list of these?
Yeah, I do.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for allowing this opportunity to get a few words in. My name is Mark Saletti. I currently live on Independence Avenue, which is part of the Summit at Shiloh condo community that is basically adjacent to where this is proposed. And, I'm not an engineer or an attorney, so there was some terminology mentioned that I would like to get some clarification, if that's possible. What is the current zoning status of this parcel? Is it agricultural?
No.
You talked about, a conditional use. I don't understand this, so I need a clarification.
The property is currently within what's called the Planned Research and Business Park District.
Okay.
That's what the zoning district is called. And underneath that district, this use is allowed as a conditional use, and we have that hearing tonight.
Okay, so you had mentioned, or someone had mentioned, that there's approximately 620 some units proposed once the project is finalized. And doing a little research online, there's parking permitted for around 1,100 plus vehicles. Has there been a full traffic study of Shiloh Road, Trout Road, Drivable Street, the Benner Pike, et cetera, on what kind of impact 1,100 cars is going to do? I live in that community. Right now, it's a nightmare to pull out of Trout Road onto Shiloh Road, I mean, you might wait 10 minutes to get a break in traffic so you can exit there. So I would assume, and you know what happens when you assume, I would hope that a full traffic study, some sort of impact to the neighborhoods would be done before this project moves forward. There was talk of 2 entrance and exit points, one on Shiloh and one through Evergreen Commons and Pleasant Point. Currently living at Independence Place, when the 2 newer developments, Evergreen Commons and Pleasant Point, were built, the residents there just used the shortest path to the Walmart Sam's Club parking or shopping center by driving through our private community. It is a private community. They're all owned units, there's no rentals, but the traffic has increased dramatically. Now you're talking 1,100 more vehicles. Where's that traffic going to go? We have small streets. The township does not maintain them because I guess the developer didn't meet the standards that the township requires to have College Township maintain them. So I would like to see some sort of information to provide some mitigation of traffic through Independence Place and Summit at Shiloh. If you exit one of the exits onto Trout Road from Evergreen and Pleasant Point, you come out on Trout Road, make a left and then a quick right, you're in our development. And that's much shorter than going all the way to Shiloh and around to Drivabus to get to the rear entrance of Sam's Club and Walmart, et cetera. So I would like to see some sort of information on how this project is going to impact the homeowners at Summit at Shiloh and Independence Place, if that's possible, please. You mentioned a traffic light will eventually be installed. We've been told in our neighborhood that a traffic light at Trout Road and Shiloh Road was imminent. I don't know where you were planning to locate this traffic signal when you're ready. Is it going to be at the main entrance on Shiloh? Is it going to be the corner of Shiloh and Trout? Again, come on out, check out our neighborhood, drive on Trout Road to Shiloh and see how long it takes you to make a left-hand turn to go towards I-99. It's very frustrating. Visibility is poor. There's going to be an accident there. I guess that's really it. Those are my questions. Those are my concerns. I appreciate the opportunity to.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Saletti.
Thank
you. Is there anybody else? I do have a list here, and we'll just go down the list here, and if you want to, you can just raise your hand, come on up. I have Dolores Gibney. Yeah.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address council and developers. I also live at the Summit of Shiloh. I live on Jefferson, and my concern is about tax base because, and I'm kind of new back to Pennsylvania after living in South Carolina for 25 years, so I'm wondering about tax rate for the industrial use as opposed to residential. And has that analysis been done for the, because I'm a taxpayer and I don't want my taxes to go up. I basically live on a fixed income, and I'd like to know that impact for the next meeting, if that would be possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the list is Karen Saletti. Does Karen want to say anything?
My husband took care of it, thank you.
All right. Thank you. John Sepp. Nothing? Ron Borger, you want to say anything else? You sure? I take his advice. Yeah, that's good. And I'm sorry, I'm having a tough time reading this, but I think last name Flickinger, is that correct?
Matt.
Matt, yeah, Matt. Yeah, okay. Do we have anybody online? If you do wish to speak online, just raise your virtual hand.
Seeing none at the moment.
Seeing none. Okay. Moving on.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
the way that if I may, the way that the agenda is set up, we were going to adjourn the conditional use hearing and then move directly into the discussion about the tentative plan. Okay, so,
Move to adjourn
yeah, I'm sorry.
hearing A. Is that what it's describing?
Yeah, sure.
Second.
Okay, we'll adjourn hearing A. All right, and we will move to open hearing B, which is Crew 814 Planned Residential Development Tentative Plan.
Yeah, both of them are coming back.
So you're hearing the to be sworn in again?
No, not if they already have. I just wanted to make the same comment I made earlier. This is going to be a very similar process because this hearing is going to come back again along with the first one. So you're free to ask questions or make comments tonight, but you'll have another opportunity, and that applies to council as well.
All right, good. So we're going to start now what's called the public hearing on the actual PRD plan. We're referring to some of the exhibits that we had before, so you should have at least a plan set in front of you, as well as you can look at the plan that's on there. And it's a little bit more informal process that we have. Your ordinance has an awful lot of standards that are shown that have to be demonstrated to be met. We're not going to go through all of them. I think it's going to be way too tedious, and I think your staff has done a very good job of doing that work for you, going through to make sure all the cleanup work has been done, all the engineering details, and north arrow is shown the right way, and all that type of stuff. Those are all basically been cleared up because we did talk about the comment letter that we have, which shows that there's really nothing left from a design detail area that we needed to go through. Nevertheless, I think it's important to make a presentation of the plan because there are some really important components that we want to talk about, particularly workforce housing, and we want to talk a little bit about the density and how we got to the density calculation and where that sits relative to the maximums and how this could be actually developed under any different schemes, or developed, schemes is the wrong word, under the development plans going through with that. So what we're going to do is we're really going to be focusing on the ordinance standards, which are in section 145-12 of your zoning ordinance, and those are really the PRD standards that we have. And that, in my book, that goes on for 4 pages, all right? But we're not going to go through every one of them. We kind of do them in clumps as we go forward here and spend a little bit more time on the ones that we think are important. Then I think the idea is to have kind of Q&A that we may have, that you guys have about the development, more about the design details, that kind of getting into the what's being shown on the plans. And we do have 28 plan sheets that come through here. Again, I just remind that this is only the tentative plan, that even after this would get approved, the developer has to come back one more time, and there'll be a final plan that will go forth. And as part of that final plan, there'd have to be the various permits for that. That would be like the NPDES permit. Again, think just like the land development plan process that we have, it's going to be the same thing. So this is not the end all for anything, and for members of the public, the presentation will come back going after, if this would get approved, as we do the final cleanup going forward with that. So we're going to primarily be looking at Exhibit 5, which is the plans, even though we can keep that up on the screen. But this is the plan set, Ron, that you prepared, right?
That is correct, yep.
All right, and are you familiar with the PRD requirements that are set forth in section 145-12?
That is correct,
All
yes.
right. So let's just kind of run through the standards that we have that are on here. And I have the ordinance sitting up here, and maybe we can get to some of the stuff. Various number A, we have some general site plan data that's on there. Mm-hmm. And this is the typical information that's shown on, sheets 1 and 2, name development, North Point graphics, key maps. Mm-hmm. That's all on here, correct?
That is correct.
And that's on sheets 1 and 3?
Yes, 1 and 3.
All right. Number B, we then go to the existing features. Sheet number 2 on here, that actually shows the existing features. We turn to that. We see that it appears to be undeveloped. Is that correct?
That is correct,
It appears
yes.
to be a tree line going through the middle. What's this thing here? Kind of a lane of some sort?
Yeah, some type of farmer's lane.
All right, and there is the kind of a bulb cul-de-sac for the development to the south. All right, so but otherwise it's essentially vacant.
It's undeveloped property at present.
All right, so we get to number C here. And again, when we get to the existing conditions, this has all the details that were required for the, in the PRD here, which talks about the acreage, shows any existing features, easements, and those type of things, right? Okay. So the next thing we talk about is the proposed development, and that, I believe, gets to sheet number 4, right?
That is correct. Yes.
And that's really the colorized version we have on the screen that we have on there. So on here, there's a bunch of stuff we're supposed to show. We're supposed to show the, besides the layout, we have some development tables that are up on here. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. We have the development table, we have land planning and the impervious coverage, street right-of-way data, so yes, multiple charts.
All right. So this shows the number, of various units that are on there in the development table. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. So let's just talk a little about, we'll get to density since we're here right now. There is a chart here about the development table at the end of the right-hand side of that. And we have 2 columns here which talks about the maximum allowable units per acre. That's the ordinance standard, right?
That is correct.
So depending what you're doing, it's either 22 units per acre or it could go up to 36, correct?
That is correct.
And there appears to be a discrepancy between one's in the chapter 145 and one in 87.
And 87.
So they're not quite lining up. That probably something should be cleaned up, but they're not quite the same. How does your density compare, let's say if we look at the 22 units per acre?
Yeah, so at the bottom of the chart, it does say 21.97. That was commented upon by a planning commission member. We looked at that. That was just a mathematical error. So that number is actually less. So yeah, so we are still, I think we calculated we're around like 13, kind of 14 dwelling units per acre. So you can clearly see we are way below what the allowable is for the PRD.
Okay. Getting back to the ordinance under section C again, it talks about, the location of the buildings, parking areas, and that's shown on here, is that correct?
That is correct.
And we have locations of the driveways that are on here. Is there any subdivision proposed within here?
Yeah, so we're basically going to break this 48 acres up into five areas or 5 parcels.
Okay, and that will then be done with a subdivision plan?
Yes.
For this, go through with that. Okay. Supposed to show like walkways and sidewalks. Are those shown on the plans?
They are, yeah. They may be hard to read on the smaller or the larger scales, but if you...
Let's just take a sample on one, pick a page that, we're on page 6 now. Do we have any like walkways shown on here?
Yeah, so we do show interior walkways, we show sidewalks within each development area, each little pod area, as we like to call it. So we do show the interior walkways, and we also show the pedestrian path, the recreational path, kind of going to try to get on the exterior of the development.
Right. Is there like any other like walking trails? I see there's
Yes.
In the top 2A proposed indicating trails not fully ADA compliant, but
Right.
there is a trail being proposed.
There is, yes, correct.
All
Yeah.
right, so there will be some sort of recreation features that people can walk around through sidewalks.
Yes.
Connecting through that.
Yep.
Okay. We go down to the number 7, I'm under C7 here, which really talks about regional fire protection requirements. And it talks about there has to be, contacting the water authority. Have you made contact with the water authority?
Yes, we have.
And what was kind of the response that you got from them?
Yeah, so we did get we did submit a letter of intent. We have received that document. So yeah, so and then we've been in correspondence with the water authority at the last meeting, showing different water line options. And again, under the tentative plan, the objective was to show approximate location. So once we reach the final plan, all of those details will be worked out.
Do you think there's going to be any issues with, establishing locations for the water lines and the fire hydrants and those type of things?
No, we see no issue with that.
Moving on, we have number 8, perimeter setbacks and buffer yards. Is that shown on the plans?
Yeah, so I think we do have a landscape plan. I believe it's sheet number 20, but we do show a buffer yard against the agricultural parcel to the west, which would essentially be UAJA property. So we do show buffer yard in that area.
What about grading plan, number 11?
Yes, we do provide a grading plan, 100 scale as well as the 50 scales, so everyone can see larger, in more detail.
And that's on sheets 9 through 13, correct?
Yes, correct,
With the overall
Yep.
and the details
correct.
coming in here. Any issues with the grading that you can see coming in?
I mean, it's a challenging site due to the existing topography. There's a lot of grade differential between top to a bottom, but we've spent a lot of time working out the grading of the site, feel that we have it fairly balanced, which is great from a construction standpoint. So I think the grading, we did incorporate retaining walls just in certain areas where we really needed to. So the grading, we got all the grading to work.
Okay, great. And what about stormwater? We touched upon that before. Have you, done any analysis regarding stormwater for the project?
We actually have. So for again, up in the upper right quadrant and the upper left quadrant, we have 2 stormwater management area locations. Geotech testing has been done, infiltration testing, suitable for infiltration. And really the location for those was really chosen to stay out of the wellhead protection zone. So that's really key for having those in that location.
And again, as we said before, that they're really, shown now size for the entire development.
That is correct.
The next thing is something we hadn't talked about before, which actually association documents. If we look, we do have the exhibit here. Well, let's go back to exhibit number 7.
Oops.
What is this?
It's a declaration of covenants and restrictions. Was prepared for the Crew 814 development.
All right, so these are essentially the plan, the draft declaration to show how the HOA association could work. It's possible there could be multiple HOAs or associations, correct, or they could be nested maybe, depending on the different housing types. Is that correct?
Yeah. So right now that this is draft, but as we go through the process, the Burkentine Group will work with the attorney preparing this to finalize this. But yes, it could be a mixture of 2. I mean, yeah. So.
All right. So and this has been submitted to the staff, and it's under their current review right now.
Correct.
They don't really have approval, but they're just making sure that it's there.
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. So, next thing is the transportation impact report. I know we had a question. The gentleman had a lot of questions about traffic, how to handle it, because we didn't really touch upon that. What's happening with the traffic study and the potential improvements along Shiloh?
Sure. So currently there is a scoping application that has been submitted by Wooster Associates, really analyzing the whole Shiloh corridor and the surrounding area. That has been submitted. It's under review by the various agencies. Spoke to Wooster a few days ago. He's receiving comments back, so it's a work in progress. That's going to be ultimately part of a much larger study, which would be the traffic impact study. So that is currently being worked on.
All right, so we're really just a component of that. So it's not being done in a piecemeal process. It's looking at the entire thing, and then our contribution that we would have with this traffic is going to be put into the overall study, and we're going to be responsible for a certain percentage of that improvements. Obviously, the traffic signal is going to be the one. There could be other ones. There could be some cooperation maybe with the developer. We're not quite sure where that goes, but that's really an independent process that's going on right now.
Correct.
And ultimately, the developer will need a highway occupancy permit to access Shiloh Road, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And that can't happen unless PennDOT approves it.
PennDOT has to approve the highway occupancy permit, so that will be worked on as part of the phase, the final phasing of the project for phase 1.
And there was a deferral granted by the council regarding kind of a duplicative study at this point, right?
Yeah, so with the scoping application, so that's being analyzed now, that's being reviewed until that's really fully vetted out by the various agencies. That'll have an impact to the overall traffic impact study. So they're kind of working in conjunction. So that's all part of that process.
All right, so moving on in the ordinance standards here, we deal with common open space. We did talk about that before. Again, we seem to have some open areas here, which are completely open, and then we have some more structured recreation, correct?
That is correct, yes.
That would be both a facility, maybe there's a clubhouse of some sort.
Yeah, so in the center part of the development, we have a recreation or a clubhouse area. Part of that area will have a pool and some recreational areas, tennis court, maybe a pickleball court, so playground facility. Actually, we're also proposing, or Burkentene's proposing to do, near the large apartment areas as well as the 64-unit townhome areas, they're going to have community gathering spaces for the residents, just to, kind of hang out with your neighbors, get to know them. There's also a dog park, which is proposed up in the larger apartment unit complex.
Now we got to get to the density calculations. We did talk about that. That's that information on sheet 4. We already went over, and you're within the allowable maximum density by quite a bit. Quite a bit below that.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. All right, then we have the narrative statement. I'm under number F on here. There was submitted here, and I believe that's exhibit number, sorry here, what exhibit do we call this one here? Yeah, sorry, exhibit 3, right?
That is correct.
So that's really the narrative that was submitted here to talk about, all the information, what's happening with the project, and that's set forth in there. And some of that we cover within the conditional use aspect. Moving on here, phasing. We do have phasing that's happening here, and there will be an actual phases schedule submitted for the various phases as we move forward over time, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right. We need a signature area, number H, of course that's on, I believe, sheet 3.
3.
We do have that. We get back to fire protection plan. Has there been any commentary or submissions to the fire chief about this?
Yeah, so when we made the initial submission to the township, I believe they had forwarded to the fire company, to the fire chief. So we did receive comments back from that agency. We were able to address those comments. I think there were 6 of those comments. So we did address those, and then we provided that information back as part of the submittal process to the township.
All right, so basically, there's no impediments or outstanding items that you're aware of, that the fire chief had regarding the development.
Correct.
All right. Last really standard we have here has to do with workforce housing. So let's go to sheet 3. All right, so.
Can you define workforce housing, please?
Sure. Let's see, get the definition of workforce housing. I can tell you in general, it's housing that's available to people within a defined income range, and it's based on the median percentage of the average income within a geographic area. And that's administered through Center County. They have a program to deal with that. So it's not low, but it's maybe 80% of average median income, I believe.
Our ordinance currently is if you're eligible, if you make between 0 and 65% of AMI right now for the rentals, and between 80 and 100% for sale. We do have a proposed ordinance. We have a public hearing on the 30th, where we're changing that AMI range from 0 to 79% for rentals. So, and then the home ownership will go between 80% and 120%.
All right, so I'm on page 3 here. There's a table down in the right-hand corner. Can you explain what's going on there?
Yeah, so basically by providing the workforce housing, working with the Burkentine Group, they actually came up through their analysis of how many units that they would prefer to provide in each area of the development. So if you could see here, in part of phase 1, we provide 16, and that's split between the apartments and the townhomes. So you could see through that chart, they are providing so many units per section of the PRD.
So the purpose is not to clump them together, right?
Right, that is
That's
correct.
not, you don't want to have like a, this is where they are, quote,
Correct.
in this zone. The idea is to disperse them out through the community, to integrate them in, so there's no difference. And my understanding is that generally with the construction, there's no real difference in the units. It just has a regulated price that can be charged for occupancy or sale.
Correct.
Okay. So that workforce housing will be provided in here, so there's no fee or off-site being done. We're just going to comply with the ordinance. Again, we talked before, this is really part of the comp plan, that we provide this type of housing to allow all types of people of income ranges to come in and participate and live in the community, right?
Correct.
Okay. I think that's about it. Anything else you want to cover on the plan?
I don't think so. I think we've pretty much explained the plan, the objective behind the plan, the different layout areas of the development. So yeah, I don't have anything more to add.
Okay. Now, there were, I guess finally, there was the comment letter that came in. You know, we talked the conditional use. There were a couple little items to go through. Any issues with any of that?
No, it's just providing some notes on the plan, so it's very minor.
Okay, so that will be cleaned up under the final tentative plan, or could be met on the actual final plan.
Correct.
Correct?
Right.
Okay. So that's basically all we have is a presentation of the PRD plan. So we're really here for part of the public hearing is really to get a discussion, to answer any questions, comments we get from members of the public that they have. Turn it over to you guys.
Do the same we did before. Yes. Yeah, council, any questions for clarification first? Susan, we'll start with you again.
Thank you. So I think well, my questions are logistical. I'm struggling to find the number of units that will be developed, the total number of units in phase. Oh, thanks. Thank you. I have logistical questions. So in phase 1, you have the table on page 3 in section 3 that details out the number of workforce housing units that
Correct.
you'll be allocating during that phase. How many total units will be developed in phase 1?
So just looking at phase 1, we have 64 fee simple, 55 townhome rentals, and 72 apartments.
Okay, so 72 apartments is in the bottom right-hand, and
Yes.
so that's 36 units in each building. And the height on the 2 buildings?
So those are 3 stories.
3 stories, okay, so 35 feet. And what is your anticipated timeline for phase 1?
We do have a chart on there.
Couldn't find that.
For phase 1, looks like construction completion by, oh boy, it's a small,
It's October 28th.
28, yeah.
October of '28. And the total project looks like it's fourth quarter 2016.
I believe it goes to
2036, 2036, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
2036.
for the later phase.
So it's a long-term project.
36.
Yeah, okay,
Now, it could be, you know, that's the end date you have to submit there. It could be brought sooner.
right. Let's see. I think one of the residents had specific questions about the traffic impact study, and you talked about the scoping application that you're doing first, and then the traffic impact study, is that correct? I'm not familiar with the scoping application. I know some of the council members might be, but briefly, what does the scoping application do, and then how does that relate to the actual traffic impact study?
Yeah, I wish I had the exact answer on that.
Okay.
I know that is something that we defer to our traffic engineer.
Okay.
So they have prepared the scoping application.
I can answer that. Basically, the scoping application is you sit down with PennDOT and with our traffic engineer, and you want to find out what intersections are getting studied. Are we just going to study Shiloh and the entrance into this, or do we go all the way out to the ramps off of I-99 and all the way up to Benner Pike?
Okay.
So once that scope has been established, what intersections are actually being studied, then you get into the TIS.
Okay, thank you. And then you did mention the stormwater management and that those are both planned right outside the wellhead area. It looks like the one in the top right-hand corner is fairly close to the wellhead. Is that correct?
It is close. However, it's the actual bottom of the basin that will be completely out of the
Out of the
wellhead.
wellhead, okay. I suspect as council members continue to ask questions, I may have more. But I think that's, for me right now, that's what I could write down while you were moving through this very, very quickly. And I'm glad to know that we'll have multiple opportunities to go through this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rich?
No questions or clarifications needed on the tentative plan.
What do we call them, clarifying questions?
Sure.
Following up on what Susan said, I heard you say earlier that the traffic impact study is being reviewed, thought I heard you say, or in the hands of folks that are looking at it. And I hear Don saying we're just in the scoping phase. Are we talking two different studies here?
We are, so we have the scoping application.
For the traffic impact study?
Scoping application from what I had, I don't know if you want to comment on
Well,
that.
there's obviously other potential developments being considered at this point.
Right.
So it's sort of parts of both at this point.
Okay, and one of them is not the broader Shiloh Road corridor study. So there's, in addition to that, there's two traffic studies going on, or two levels
No,
of
this is the broader Shiloh Road study. Right now, they're looking at several developments that, we know there's the hotel going on the other side of East Trout Road, and then there's a couple potential sites actually over into Benner Township.
Okay.
And
So I think what may be confusing to some is developers required to do a traffic impact study for this development.
Correct.
At the same time, we, PennDOT, us, somebody else, is undertaking a broader study for the entire corridor.
Yes.
The deferral that you referred to was the completion of the individual, or the TIS for this site, until we're far enough along with the Shiloh Road study?
Correct.
Okay.
We're trying to get that ironed out so that we know the impact, not only to this, the intersection of, what do you call the road onto Shiloh? Beckham and Shiloh, but like I say, it could go all the way out to the ramps off of I-99 and go all the way up to Benner Pike
Okay.
and Shiloh.
And one of the primary reasons, if I understand, I'm asking, for deferring the site-specific traffic impact study is so that whatever is required at Shiloh Road by the developer is consistent or effective with
Yeah,
the
what we
long.
don't want to do is, this study gets done by itself, you put in a traffic light.
Right,
And then the whole corridor study, we find out, oh, we gotta widen the road 20 feet. So your light needs to be pushed back 20 feet. We don't wanna be doing the work twice.
okay. So that circles me back to the clarification. That's when you were talking about the Shiloh Road entrance design being deferred to the traffic impact study. What you really mean is deferred until the Shiloh Road study is done.
Right.
'Cause I think
That way
we're-
we get a feel for where that edge of road's gonna be when a light is needed there.
And that's how I understood it. I just think it was confusing to some in the room that they were both being called traffic impact studies, and one is really yours, the other one is ours.
Just a broader
one.
corridor study.
Okay, and then one last road-related question. You offer that the road network included in the green will be built during phase one. I assume it'll be built to township standards and open before we're issuing occupancy permits? Is that a reasonable expectation?
I could say it will be built to township standards. So occupancy, that's gonna have to be dependent upon, I guess, the zoning and however the building permit process goes.
And that assumes that whatever happens at Shiloh Road is figured out by then, because you then said you don't get your highway occupancy permit unless, so the broader study has to be far enough along by 2028 so that that can be built.
Yeah, I mean, so the broader study is, it's in the works. He's receiving comments from the various agencies. So it's a pretty big undertaking, so that's just unfortunate. It's just going to take time to go
Oh, I
through that
understand.
process.
We knew that going in.
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
All right. I don't have anything. Tracy, do you have anything?
Oh, yeah, just wanted to ask, in phase one, out of the 62 workforce housings, how many will be available in that first phase?
So for phase one,
That's an 18.
18, okay, I just wanted to make
it's so
sure.
small.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, we'll open it up to public. Do you have anybody wishing to comment specifically to item B? Okay.
Online.
Anyone online?
No hands at this time.
I did
Okay.
have one more question, I'm sorry. And then of the workforce housings, like, is there gonna be a variety of rentals and townhomes? Like
There are.
size, like bedroom size? Or is it gonna be one specific?
Yeah, the chart has a, between 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Okay.
If you look at it, it kind of differentiates that, you know, as you're scattered through the different types generally.
A combination of
Okay.
one bedrooms and three bedrooms.
Okay, sorry, I'm new to council, trying to learn all this stuff. so-
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council, anything else? Anyone wish to?
Move to close hearing B, public hearing B? No? Nope. I retract that. Unmoved. Adjourn.
Adjourn the public hearing in general.
Adjourn public hearing. I move to adjourn public hearing B.
Second that.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Good thing Lewis is here.
Right? He kicked me.
Okay,
It was a very
thanks.
thorough public hearing. Very well.
Set the hearing date as the 6th.
That's what we decided.
Yeah, there were the 3 dates that we were given previously for the continuation of the 2 public hearings. The first was potential January 16th, the next was February 6th, and then potentially, possibly the 20th of February. I would recommend that we go on the 6th if that works for council at this point. I think that gives sufficient time for council to have conversations, deliberations, be able to reconvene the public hearing and take additional comment at that time.
I would say if you have any specific questions or something that, you know, you want to funnel it through staff, if you come to us, and maybe we could be prepared if there's anything specific that maybe isn't included in here. We'd be glad to get that information and be prepared to make the presentation a little bit better next time.
Great.
Certainly open for that. And I think if we schedule the 6th, we wouldn't have to re-advertise it. By announcing it tonight, we should be good without additional public advertising.
And that's within the 45 days.
Yes.
So it's a matter of
We have to
council.
reopen the.
We're gonna have to reopen.
Do you have to reopen the public hearing?
No, this is under old business.
Public hearing.
So
This
we're
is
just
just a
jumping ahead
separate,
to-
this is just a separate
We'll
action.
open it up. Yeah, we can address it in old business. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah.
I'm good with the 6th. I just thought that was something we'd decide later on in the agenda, but as long as they're here, is that the idea?
Well, we should open a meeting before we discuss it, so. that's
Oh,
probably
we
what
closed
we
the
should do.
public hearing. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
So just convene the,
This wasn't the matter for the public hearing. The setting of the.
that is correct.
The setting of the hearing is a regular
Yeah.
meeting item.
all right, well, so then I'll call to order our College Township Council regular meeting.
my mistake.
And we can probably move that up and address that right now if you want. Okay, so let's do that. So we want to address when we would schedule the next public hearing. Yeah. Is everybody okay with that? Give a thumbs up. 6?
I mean, we've got to be here anyways on the 6th.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
A simple motion would suffice to set the
Yep.
next date of the public hearing.
So moved.
No, just February 6th.
All right, so we have a motion to set the next public hearing for Crew 814
Second.
for January 6th.
Or
And-
February 6th.
February 6th, sorry, February 6th, 2025. And we have motion, we have second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere.
Okay, so we'll move into public open discussion for College Township Council regular meeting. And this is for anything that's not on this evening's agenda. If you'd like to approach or raise your hand online. If you're here for anything on the agenda, we can discuss it at that point. Okay? All right, moving on to new agenda items. Any members of council wish to add an item of business to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to request that we add in a discussion of the council additional contribution for the health insurance premium for employees.
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? We have a motion to add, again, can you just repeat, Susan?
Yeah, to add discussion of a one-year council contribution towards the health care premium
Are we in?
for township employees.
Go ahead.
Add discussion,
Second.
1 year contribution, discussion only to healthcare for township employees. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, is there any, yeah, you seconded, sorry, I opened it up discussion. Any further discussion on that?
And we just want to clarify it's discussion only.
Yes.
It
Yes.
may meet the standard for an, but
Yes,
No, it
exactly.
does.
Yeah,
it does?
it does.
Does.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not gonna take any action.
I mean, it may meet the standard for action. It's close, I guess, isn't it? Depends on the cost.
Is it an expenditure?
Yes.
Well, it would be an
Potential.
expenditure.
In the future?
There's not a need for there to be action. There is a need for a conversation to
Okay.
determine if an action is forthcoming.
Okay. I like
Okay.
more comfortable with that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, so we'll add that as new business item number 2.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? All right, move on to special presentation, zoning hearing board, Ben Elks.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Ben Eltz, I'm the chair of the College Township Zoning Hearing Board. I'm here for your annual update. Your zoning hearing board has 5 board members, really strong group of 5 people, very competent, very experienced. We serve 5-year terms, and we exist to hear for 2 reasons. One is to hear grievances from residents who feel that the zoning, the code has been applied unfairly. So we would hear that grievance and then make a decision between the township and the resident. And the second reason would be to listen to a variance request when someone's asking for relief from the code. We're unique in that we decide issues between the township and the residents. And in that sense, we're kind of, it's called quasi-judicial in that we make the decision and then either the township or the resident can appeal that through the court system if they feel like the decision was an error. We don't have much action as a zoning hearing board, which is a good thing. Each year we are probably hearing 2 or 3 cases. This year, ending 2024, we've only had 1 case, and that was a business that applied for a variance in the Dale Summit area, and we actually deferred that for a year to see if we could get some of the zoning things that the council is working through finished, which might make that variance request unnecessary. So that's through June 2025. But the reason that we don't have a lot of cases is because a very competent zoning officer communicates well with residents and makes good decisions. Then also a good zoning hearing board that doesn't make willy-nilly variance requests, sticks really to the code, and I think that's known, so we don't have to deal with a lot of people asking for variances that aren't needed. I think that's all I have, but if there's any questions, be happy to take them.
All right, thanks, Ben. Yeah, council, comments, questions?
No, but thank you for your work.
Well, thanks.
I wanted to make a comment, because I tell all my friends this. I work in a lot of townships. This township has a low number of zoning hearing board problems or issues, in large part because of your staff. They work with people, your manager in particular, Lindsay, your engineer. They have meetings and they talk about things and try and work out the problems so they don't go to the zoning hearing board. And I think it's a real plus for the township. It saves you an enormous amount of money in legal fees and appeal costs and everything. So I think it's a plus, and I think you're agreeing with me that that's the case.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for hanging out. Anybody else?
I just want to thank Louis for saying that.
Yes.
That's the time for
Yes.
Yeah.
Proud ZHB alumni. I did 2 reorgs. It was rough.
Okay, on to
For the very
special,
reason Louis said.
special presentation number 2, CTIDA annual update. Carrie Miller, the executive director of the CTIDA.
Yes, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide an update. It's been a very busy year. This was my first full year as executive director for the CTIDA, having started back in September of '23. Our board, we operated at full capacity for pretty much the entire year, which is a 9-member authority. So we appreciate council's diligence in making sure we filled the 3 vacancies that we actually had come into the year with. It made work go very smoothly throughout the year. We created several policies. That was a big focus of the authority, was to create a lot of frameworks for the work that we were doing, including a new investment policy, loan policy, and loan application process through that. This year we had 4 new contracts. Go ahead and, that's the current authority. We had 4 new contracts this year. One of those was sort of a new client. They had been a client of the authorities back in 2005 under a different project, and they came to us this year. It was a great short-term loan that will be wrapping up here. It was only about a 6-month loan. We had 2 guarantees, or we're acting as a guarantor for 2 of the clients. One of those was an entirely new client, so we're working with a bank. We guarantee their loan. We have funds in a money market account there as security for that. The other guarantee was a client that we had a direct loan with who had come back and asked us for a line of credit. We decided that we wanted to move them towards being bankable. We worked with the bank then to get them a loan through the bank specifically, and we're acting as a guarantor on that account as well. We had another client who has had a line of credit through the IDA that was interest-only payments, and in the interest of moving them along through the process to become more bankable, we transitioned that and converted it over to an amortized loan. So it moves them, more in that direction. It works better for their finances and looks better for the banks too if they move in that direction. So a lot of work there. Throughout all of those, there was at least 5 jobs created. I haven't been able to get from all the clients that direct number yet, but we deployed over $650,000 from the IDA in one way or another through those clients. So you're looking at about 1 job created for every $100,000, which is pretty consistent with what SBA and a number of other programs throughout the state are. So that was pretty good. We sponsored a community idea test lab through the Happy Valley Launch Box. We created an entrepreneurial ecosystem cohort that meets downtown. It's made up of a number of our collaborative partners. We had an exit strategy workshop during the Global Entrepreneurship Week. Some other numbers, we met with 11 banks this year, which is a pretty significant amount of partnership building with our financial institutions in the community. And as I was counting my business cards that I collected, I made over 150 new contacts this year with a number of people in our community and others that work in the economic development world. Collaborating on DCED grants increased, and I think this is key for you guys in terms of finances. We increased income generation for the IDA by 50%. So we went from generating $61,000 in 2023 to over $94,000 in 2024. A lot of that is in part to some new clients, but also we started incorporating administrative fees, which is something that the IDA had not done in the past. So for us to be a sustainable organization, especially if they're going to have staff and do a number of initiatives, there had to be a way to generate more income for the IDA. Still a long way to go in terms of sustainability that way, but we've certainly made progress throughout the year. You can go ahead to the next. So strategic planning was our big hurdle this year. It was something very important for our organization to be able to move forward and something they had not done in the past. So we started with having the authority members talk about what their why is. Why did they join the authority? What is the purpose behind their involvement in that? And that's really key, I think, for any organization to really understand why the people that are on boards are participating in that. So we started with that, and then we moved into the vision, mission, and core values. We started from that very high level. What is it that if we had all the resources in the world we would want to accomplish? And that was our vision. So our vision, you can go to the next. Actually, I'll get to that. Our vision was to create a vibrant, diverse, and sustainable economy. And then when you lower that to the next level in terms of mission, enriching the quality of life in our community by driving strategic development, empowering businesses with dynamic solutions, and building collaborative partnerships. And then we came up with core values as well. That is how we want to see our organization operate to achieve the mission and vision. We had 2 workshops so far for strategic planning. We went through most of those things. As some of you who have been through strategic planning know, it doesn't always go at the time frame that you think it is. So we're going to schedule another one in February to finish out that round. So you can move to the next ones. Just wanted to show some examples of the team working together during those strategic planning. You can move through there. There's a number of those. Keep going. And I touched on the vision, mission, and core values. You can move through that. That's the vision, then to the mission, and then our core values there. So we're still finalizing some of those details, but that's where we came to from that point. And then in the second session, we talked about strategic priorities, and we'll be working in the third session about having actual objectives that have measurables, that are time-bound, and that have key performance indicators with those, something that we do not have as an organization, and we really want to align those with the strategic plans that came out of the chamber and the state as well, to make sure they align with that, as well as the plans that College Township has specifically with the Dale Summit area. So you can move to the next. The priorities and SMART objectives in terms of building a collaborative partnership as part of our mission statement. We want to better leverage the partnerships that we have and make sure that the CTIDA is having a leadership role as we look at economic development in the community here in Center County. Then empowering businesses with dynamic solutions. The priority that we came up with that is for increasing business retention and expansion. And we're looking at personal outreach to business owners and possibly doing a business retention survey with the businesses in our community. And we may start that very targeted to College Township specifically, just to get the framework for that moving. Then driving strategic development. We had 2 priorities out of that area. The first one is target area revitalization, and that plays in really well with the development we have going on in the Dale Summit. So making sure that we are the College Township IDA, and while we can serve anybody in Center County, we want to make sure that we're also focusing on what we have going on here in College Township. So getting very involved in the Dale Summit, this revitalization going around the mall, and then thank you, Council, for approving in the budget the $25,000 for the small business grants for 2025. Looking forward to being able to implement that program, get that started, and see some beautification and facade improvements for the businesses here along College Avenue, Shiloh Road, and Benner Pike. So we appreciate that. Thank you very much for that consideration. And the last one on there is priority for diversifying industry sectors. And this is where we've really been working with our community partners to identify areas that we really have a stronghold in, and sensor technology is one of those. So we actually had a sensor technology meeting with a number of stakeholders involved in that, and you'll hear more about that, I'm sure, in the coming days. So just really wanted to echo what we're trying to create here with our vision and mission, and we want you guys together with us as we create that vibrant, diverse, and sustainable economy. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Council, comments, questions? I guess we'll have Susan lead this one out.
Reading all the comments. So I want to thank you, Carrie, for the work that you've done as executive director. I've been serving as council liaison to the IDA now for 2 years, and there's been a lot of growth and a lot of organization and a lot of work that's being done now. And I really appreciate the work that the IDA and the commitment to being part of the regional partnerships and working on economic development. So it's been a pleasure to serve as your liaison.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciated having you.
Yeah. Rich?
From whence we came, amazing progress. Loved all the buzzwords: structure, planning, policies, vision, mission. You're setting a great foundation. Thank you.
Don't forget KPIs, too.
What's that?
KPIs, too.
Oh,
She
okay.
had that one in there.
I made sure I said it,
Yeah.
the full thing, because I have a lot of people say, what does KPI mean? So,
Nice.
What Susan and Rich said, and I think that's why you got more than what you asked for from council.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
good update.
Well, just curious, what was the idea behind administrative fees? Who decided on that? And why wasn't it something thought about before?
I had brought it up as we were looking at kind of what our balance is. Obviously, with them bringing on an executive director, it was an expense that they had not had before. So there wasn't a whole lot of thought as to how were they going to be able to sustain themselves over this time. We want the IDA, I don't know how familiar you are, but we're really one of the only functioning IDAs in Center County, the only ones with funds to do anything. And so it's important that this IDA continues to be sustainable so that we can provide that support. And it wasn't something they had been able to think of ahead of time. And so I introduced the idea of having the administrative fees, and it certainly has worked out well for us this year.
Job well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Okay, moving on to reports, manager's update.
I have nothing additional to add to the report that is in the pack tonight, but if there are any questions, I'll be happy to try to address those.
Questions for the manager? Anyone? Yeah, Rich?
One question, two questions. The deadline for action on the solar power purchasing agreement?
I'll defer to Mike. There isn't a specific deadline. As we speak, there are a number of potential participants that are moving through making those determinations right now. We're about halfway through the total number of people, proposed participants making those decisions. So we're anticipating at this point that this would be something for council to take a formalized action on immediately after our reorganization meeting, at our regular meeting that we will hold on January 6th. Mike, is there anything more on that?
You hit the nail on the head. As we talked about it when we unveiled the list of agreements, it was in your best interest to kind of be one of the later adoptees to this or considering adopting, and that process is working out. Basically, by the end of this week, I think the ones that I was most concerned about, the big four, will have provided their answers, and that'll provide some good guidance and things for consideration for council. So I think we are queued up at this point to have a discussion on the 6th after reorg.
I would just share, for the good of the cause, that the proposed location for the solar power purchasing agreements array received conditional final approval on Tuesday from the County Planning Commission.
Very good.
The other question I would have is, it indicates that the casino pre-submission meeting was on the 16th.
Oh, yes.
Sure.
Yeah, Mike handled that, and I'm going to let him describe what went on.
Yeah, it was, I think, a very successful pre-submission meeting. In addition to staff, Adam, Lindsay, and myself were on board. We had 17 individual participants on the meeting. I would venture to guess representing about 10 individual firms. Handful of questions, not daunting, and most of them were not unexpected questions. So we have already provided a addendum to the RFQ and sent that out to everyone that has expressed interest, as well as loaded it up to the website, which also included a summary of questions and answers as well as the presentation. So I think we're well on our way. They have until almost the end of January the 24th is our submission deadline. So here by the end of the next month, we're going to have a pretty good indication of the level of interest. And then, of course, at some point here, we're going to have a discussion with council about who the representatives on the selection committee or evaluation committee will be. That is going to be constituted of 2 members of council, 3 members of staff. So that's a discussion I think we're looking at the 6th as well for having amongst council to see who amongst you wants to do some light reading. So.
Great, thank you, and good follow-up afterwards. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions for the manager? Okay, moving on to COG, Regional County Liaison Reports. We do have 2 submitted written reports, one from Eric and one from Susan. Anything to add to that?
I have nothing to add beyond that.
I think Mrs. Miller did. Mrs. Miller did a good job.
Okay, PC. See Matt's in the room.
Yeah, Tuesday night we met, and I'm going to read them right thing. We voted for recommendation for approval for the Clearwater Conservancy Community Conservation Sector Preliminary/Final Land Development Plan. There's a couple issues that came up, but it was nothing that the staff thought was, would hold us back. And the second thing is, as these gentlemen stated earlier, we recommended the CREW 814 Plan Residential Development Tentative Plan and Conditional Use Master Plan for approval. Does anybody have any questions on?
Questions for Matt? Go ahead.
Matt, did I read that the vote on that was 4-1 or 3-2?
No, the 5 unanimous both times.
Might have been something else.
There was another one that was 3-2. So
Yeah, that was, that's coming up later in the agenda with the indoor rec.
Will you be here for that, or are you taking off? Okay.
I just want to thank for all the hard work you folks have done and all the cooperation with PC. And lastly, even though most of my healthcare career I spent working in a mall, my wife said I'm not so good at buying the holiday presents and all that stuff. And she said that this year if she got a present like I've been doing in the past, that she was going to burn it. So I decided to buy her nice candles.
That's back.
All right.
Thank you, Matt.
We needed that one, thanks. Pick up some steam. Is there any other committee reports that we're missing? Okay. Committees to be formed, many are coming. Other committees. All right, DEIB.
Adam provided the report at the last meeting, so beyond saying happy holidays to everyone, no report tonight.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to this evening's consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight is CA1, which consists of minutes and approval of our December 2nd budget workshop, our December 5th regular meeting. CA2 is correspondence, receipt, approval of the following. A is an email from Michelle Amato dated December 2nd regarding the casino. B is an email from Dan Materna dated December 4th regarding casino. C is a letter from HRG dated December 4th regarding time extension for the PSU Beaver Stadium renovation preliminary/final land development plan to April 1st, 2025. D is an email from Dan Materna dated December 5th, 2024 regarding Prime Corp Properties interest in the Nittany Mall. E is a letter from Scott Binkley dated December 9th, 2024 regarding 2025 COG committee appointments. F is an email from Andrew Schaefer dated December 12th regarding casino impacts. CA3 is an action item approval of Resolution R-24-28 for a DEP sewage facilities planning module for the Penn State Soccer Operations Center. Do any members of council wish to pull any of these items? Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, do we have any opposed? None opposed. Okay. All right, back into old business with Crew 814 again.
All right, thank you. So the folks here did a pretty good job at describing all the details of the plan. And we can check that off our list. We got our first public hearing out of the way, which was required by the MPC that we hold it within 60 days of submission of the plan. So on Tuesday, as Matt noted, the Planning Commission reviewed the plan again, had a presentation, and made recommending approval of the multifamily uses in the planned residential development. If you recall, back in 2023, October of 2023, we passed the ordinance that we worked on for about a year prior, adding this use to the planned research business park district. And so, we're working through the ordinances and just ensuring that they're touching every condition that needs to be met. We did, as he noted, get a very detailed plan, so staff did a very detailed review of it. A lot of our comments, we decided that they're final plan comments and that aren't appropriate right now with the tentative plan process at this stage. So staff reviewed the plan, responded, Pentair responded. After tonight and after Tuesday, we'll respond again with the submission that they provided to us. And if council has anything to add, as noted, you could please provide those to us. So tonight's public hearing was a good opportunity. I know we had some folks reach out to us via email. There is one public comment that was provided to you in your packets. So that's all the public notice. And, as a result of all the public notice, that's what we got. The Planning Commission got a similar memo that you received in your packet tonight, which outlined, where we've been, why we're here, our review status, and we took what the Planning Commission discussed at their meeting, their two meetings in November and their meeting in December, and sort of came up with recommended conditions for them. After review of those recommended conditions, they felt, those are things that are gonna happen eventually. They're gonna happen during final plan presentations. So when they did make their recommendation, they included two, other than some of the basic stuff that we do, add a note to the plan stating sidewalk along Shiloh Road shall be incorporated with approval of traffic impact study as part of final plan submission. So as you know, the TIS has been deferred, and we understand that if there are improvements required on Shiloh Road, that we're gonna be able to incorporate that sidewalk, because one of the big recommendations in the Dale Summit Area Plan is to eventually connect to the Spring Creek Canyon. So that's kind of one step to get us closer to there. And then finally, add a note to the plan stating that all requirements of Section 180 are met with the final plans. And 180 is our subdivision and land development ordinance. So the Planning Commission, I think, felt pretty comfortable making those. They saw a lot of the plan, and council heard the presentation tonight, and once the tentative plan is approved, final plans will start coming in. So this won't be the last time that you'll see it. Of course, we'll have another public hearing, but once the final plans come in, PC will review, make recommendations, and have those for council. So if you have any questions, if you want to get into more plan details, they did stick around. If you have any questions about the memo, but so far it just feels like we're just going through the process and the steps.
Okay, so looking at the memo, right, so we have the first two items that it says council's asked to consider the questions below. Do we want to try to get a sort of a consensus around those two things this evening? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea, because eventually you're gonna have to make your decision. So if you want to have those discussions tonight, yes. As noted earlier in the presentation, a conditional use is a permitted use. You can attach reasonable conditions onto that if you so feel. And so we'll be looking for that, and then of course the tentative plan eventually.
Okay, so council would agree, I think that we could probably try to get a consensus on that number 1 there. Does council consider multifamily residential uses appropriate for the Plan, Research, and Business Park District? Comments, Eric?
Well, it's been a while since we did a conditional use, but it seems to me that the two questions are tied together. And that's the whole point of conditional use, is that it may or may not be appropriate depending on the conditions we put on the plan. Have I phrased that correctly?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm saying it's kind of hard for me to answer A without understanding what conditions we've asked for to be met to make it appropriate.
Right. So some of the...
That's how we've handled conditional use in the past. So those two seem to be tied together. You can't really answer A without having some consensus on what we're asking for in B and acceptance from the developer that those are reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and, you know, taking the recommendation from the Planning Commission, the two conditions that they tacked on were the ones I noted.
Okay. So then my other question would be, we're kind of then talking about A and B now together, right?
Yeah.
We almost have to.
Sure.
Then the planning commission had your letter and the red responses before Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay. So what they ended up with then, they were satisfied with everything there, and that's why there's only really 2 conditions that they're recommending being attached
Exactly, yeah.
to this. Which begs the question, then, if those are the only conditions that staff and planning commission are asking for, it almost seems like residential should be an allowed use in there anyways.
Yeah, and, you know, noting that we changed the zoning back in October in 2003 to allow this conditional use in the PRBD, and we did change the intent of the PRBD to permit multifamily residential uses.
Okay, then that takes me to my last point or question would be, because of the density you're likely to get in adding residential, much of the unanticipated or much of the impact, and we heard about that tonight, is going to be traffic because of increased density.
Right.
So I'm not seeing anything from Planning Commission or staff conditions related to trying to mitigate that impact as part of the condition.
Right, so when we did recommend to, you know, that was a concern of the Planning Commission. We pulled that out from listening back to their meetings. And we noted that there were some traffic concerns. And some of the conditions that were recommended from staff would be the TIS will identify requirements to improve the existing transportation network. Of course, include a pedestrian facility along Shiloh Road and ensure all of the identified elements in the TIS are completed.
Yeah, but aren't those really things that we would get anyways out of land development plan?
Exactly, yeah, and that was kind of what the Planning Commission was
So I'm
really
back to
getting
my point that we really, so far, don't have any conditions that would theoretically be required to allow residential in there. So it's kind of a circular reference I'm dealing with here. Am I correct?
Yeah, essentially, what I think that you received from the Planning Commission, it's taken the form of a recommendation, but they're basically findings, right, that the Planning Commission identified. Here are things that we have found that could be attached as conditions to this plan.
Right, but if they're going to be required as part of land development plan.
And actually, one of the ways, one of the recommendations is structured, to my way of thinking, that it captures those things that we would expect to see as part of the plan to begin with. I mean, conformance with section, whatever the reference was there.
Yeah, with 180, with
Right.
the subdivision and land development.
So in conformance with that is going to get you exactly what we're talking about.
So far, we don't really have in front of us any conditions that would be unique to the conditional approval versus the land development plan.
yeah, not
Conditional use.
not at this time. Now, again, based on what testimony, what public hearing comment.
Okay, that was what I was going to get to then.
There you go.
I just
Then I'll
wanted to-
just stand down.
Well, so that opens the door then to things that wouldn't be reasonable things, that couldn't be, or wouldn't legally be required through the land development plan. So that's where we're at. We don't have to determine them tonight. We have 3 meetings, right, or 2 or 3 meetings?
We do, yeah, you do.
But the idea tonight is maybe to identify any of those that aren't already in here so that developer and council can think about those before the next meeting?
That is correct.
Yep, and I
Okay.
think that's, really what they're requesting. As a result of this, they can come back and they'll have more information for you at the next public hearing.
Okay.
And Eric, you have, it's almost like a zoning hearing board, you have 45 days after the last hearing to set your condition, to write your conditions.
Okay, I don't have, most of my, are traffic, are staging and traffic related.
Okay.
And we were accomplishing the staging part with the requirement in the land development plan that the road connection between Shiloh and Pleasant be done in the first phase, so we don't end up with a cul-de-sac for 20 years. So I think that doesn't need to be a condition, right?
No, it was actually, that was one of our initial comments on the plan submission. And as a result of our comment and some discussions with the planning commission, they decided to bring Beckham the whole way down out through Pleasant Point.
And then-
Rather than have that, they were planning on having that cut through right through the community area. So felt it was a little bit, made more sense to have the road rather than that little driveway.
And of course, the sidewalk deferral on Shiloh makes sense because of the staging of the 2 impact studies, understand? So the only thing I would throw out there, and then I'll stop, is just the idea that maybe, just maybe, there are some other off-site traffic or pedestrian improvements that could be made to help mitigate some of the concerns that we heard tonight.
We heard about cut-through traffic through an.
Yeah, I mean, those are things we can't theoretically address during land development plan because they're off-site.
Yeah.
But if I understand conditional use, that at least opens up the door for discussion. Not saying I have the answer, not saying anything other than tossing it out there.
Okay. Thanks good. Thanks, Eric, for vetting out discussion. So let's take Eric's lead and vet that out further and discuss what you kind of have an idea for the conditions, if you would. Rich, next.
Oh, right, okay. No, I appreciate that was laid out. What we heard tonight needs to factor into the discussions moving forward. The one thing, we're talking about the sidewalk along Shiloh. I'd like to see if we could expound on the internal pedestrian traffic flows, what those look like in support of the outdoor recreational areas, in particular as multifamily. Being outside is a good thing. The traffic, there's concerns. If we have an opportunity to help in some of these situations where we normally don't have, I look forward to the opportunity.
That's what I was hinting at.
Yeah. I just said it a little louder. And then, the items that the planning commission touched on, public transportation, refuse is a totally different animal in a residential area than a commercial area. And the topography, I'm from the school that tough topography makes a pretty neat design, so put your chomps into that, Mr. Stepp. And the one thing I'd heard, we're looking at retaining walls, just safety of those, that we don't end up, a step off and end up with liability issues and everything. But in general, I appreciate that so much has already been brought to the table, already has been discussed. And if we continue this back and forth positive. I think we're going to end up with a good development. That's all I have,
Susan.
Mr. Chair.
Well, Eric, thank you for your comments. That was my question, but I would not have posed it as eloquently as you did. So I'm still working through some of my understanding about
Dustin, that's killing
the planning. And so I think along with that comment is this, again, I'm trying to tease out what is part of the discussion around the land development plan versus the conditional uses that we're asking for. So what I think I understood you saying is asking to incorporate off-site changes is the conditional use versus part of the actual discussion of the land development plan. And so
Well, what I was saying is that's not something we can ask for as part of the land development plan.
Right. And so,
Generally, we can ask, something that would be required.
Just a clarification, it's not just the conditional use, it's the planned residential development that enables us to do some negotiating as well, is that correct?
But that's within the site, right? PRD?
Yeah,
That's part of
Eric's right, it's within the site, and the conditional use is
It takes it outside, okay. great.
and so that would include something along the lines of the connectivity to the canyon.
Yeah.
So those would all
You
be
stole
considered.
my thunder. That's all right.
Sorry, I'm sorry. You can have it back.
No, I
I didn't even know I had it. I didn't even know I
yielded
had
to
it.
you.
And then I guess the other piece of this is because it's in the wellhead protection zone, as part of the final land or the land development plan that we'll be discussing, I presume engineering has been talking with the developers around that, but that's a particularly sensitive area. We have sinkholes in the area. I'm sure engineers have thought about this already, but it is something I wanted to articulate as a particular concern. But that would be part of the land development plan discussion rather than any kind of conditional or use.
If folks are looking at me, I'm going to say yes.
Okay. I'll look at the engineer and the planner too.
Well, she was looking at you, so we all looked at you.
Yeah.
Report as part of the land development plan.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, Susan?
So much, but I'll wait.
Okay. Tracy?
I have no comment.
You're not, see. Yeah, so I was very intrigued and interested because I think I remember when we first talked about this, about the connectivity to the canyon, and you guys have talked about it for a while, a little bit for as well. You know, is there some type of, way to help get a path at least out to the highway, right? Like, I don't even know if that's even possible, but, is something on the table to discuss and consider, right? Or to start that anyways, right? Was this the one too where there originally was planned like a bike path around it? Like a circular path, walking?
It was a pedestrian path.
Pedestrian path, is that still on the table too?
It is, yeah, if I may stand up. So we
Now,
do
I
have-
guess now I'm teetering on what's on site and, yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, so we do, have a pedestrian path, actually, kind of goes around this way, runs up here, kind of comes up this way, and then also starts here, wraps around this. So tried to get as much of the perimeter as we could, but we're really restricted in, it's actually off the plan, but this is the Columbia Gas easement, and there's no possibility to actually put any type of path or any grading in that area, so.
Okay. All right. And then, yeah, I'm really interested in what Erica brought up too about the streets, I guess, to the south, right? And what that looks like as far as off-site. But that's the only comments I had for conditions. Should we move on then to anything else on conditions? Conditional use?
If I could say, since it appears there is at least general support for what I teased, I mentioned both pedestrian and vehicle traffic mitigating strategies, and for the most part, traffic would be to mitigate the cut-through that we heard about tonight, that I think we had in our minds all along. It just came front and center tonight. And what Dustin is referring to, that's what I was thinking from PED connections, because those two things seem to be reasonable because we're allowing residential, which significantly increases density and ped and vehicle traffic in and out of the site. So it seems to me that asking for some kind of improvement outside of the land development plan that would help mitigate those two factors, to me, seems reasonable. I think we can flesh details out, whether it's a bike path to the canyon or some kind of off-site improvement on south on, is it Pleasant Point Boulevard?
Yeah.
That helps discourages or mitigates through traffic. Whether it's those things or not, that's what I was teasing at, that there seems to maybe be some support here. And I just want to say, I think those are reasonable, given what we're allowing, in the sense that we're allowing residential in the zoning district.
I concur 100%. I would just add that I think it really fits into our whole Dale Summit area plan too, right? Like that whole connectivity there, right? Like we're allowing, to your point, very well said, higher density, right? And the idea is, right, we want those folks to be able to walk and bike and not just drive everywhere. And the further, you got me thinking, and I don't know how, just maybe as a planted seed, I don't know how we address this, but when we look at the Shiloh Road corridor, right, are we going to, if that road ends up expanding, like how do we mitigate the fact that it now becomes a barrier for pedestrian traffic, right? Yeah, how do we look to that in the future, because that shouldn't be a barrier for pedestrian traffic, and because we're developing both sides of it, and if I lived over there, I'd want to go to Jersey Mike's pretty easily. I'm just saying, right?
We do.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
Crossing the street's a little dangerous. Yeah.
If I could walk to Jersey Mike's, that's like a perfect world.
We do.
So,
Burn it all.
Yep.
Walk to the movies too.
See? Yep.
I do have one last question.
Yeah, go ahead,
And
Susan.
it's the difference between the land development plan and the conditional use. So there's a plan for a trash compactor or some sort of trash processing unit in the plan. And there's mention here from the PC coordinating with the COG to ensure long-term and adequate refuse and recycling services. So that is an agreement between COG and the developer to manage the refuse? Is that something?
Well, understand that the township has a refuse ordinance.
Right.
Okay, that folks need to comply with. Typically as now exists in apartment complex situations, generally speaking, those are per contract between the owner, operator, developer of the complex and private firm for trash collection. So they're not typically part of the otherwise residential center region system.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what the Planning Commission was getting to was that in the same way that our other individual residents,
Mm-hmm.
single-family homes and other apartment complexes may provide for all of those types of refuse collection, including recycling, that those same things be contemplated in this development as well.
Yeah, the thing I didn't understand was, if there are other apartment complexes in the township that, say, collect garbage in dumpsters. So removing garbage from a dumpster seems a traditional way to do it, but this sounded like almost like a trash processing, small trash processing facility. It sounded different than trash collection, as I understand it.
I'm not aware that we have any compactors on site of developments, and I think that's, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so,
help me.
Be smart, but anyway, so we have a trash compactor facility located right in this area. So, and the way that the developer is going to set that up, basically for any of the rental areas, so it would be the townhome rentals, the apartment rentals, and that rental complex there. Everything is going to be picked up via third party and then brought down to the compactor facility. Now, the fee simples will have their own individual trash service pickup, and we've spoken to the recycling center. They actually can do curbside pickup. So, yeah, so that's the intent with that, with the fee simple area. Everything else, as far as the rental units, will be brought down to the compactor facility and then, eventually hauled off site.
Okay. Anyone else? Nope. So we want to discuss the
PRD.
Yeah, the PRD specifically. Thanks. Sorry. Yeah. You want to lead out again?
We kind of overlap there.
Yeah, there is a bit of overlap.
I don't have a whole lot to say other than I'm concerned that I hope we can make sure that we get the connection to Shiloh Road done, regardless of the status of the Shiloh Road project. I know it looks great. The plan looks great. Let's get this all done. But I'm concerned that if for some reason the Shiloh Road project bogs down, we don't get an HOP or we end up being asked to defer the connection there to Shiloh, until such time. And it makes sense. I understand that. But it all kind of is it's kind of contingent on what seems to me a tight timeline. But John's going to tell me it's not a tight timeline. It's going to get done, right?
I'm John Sepp from Pentair Engineering. Access to Shiloh Road will happen with the first phase. It's just a matter of the type of access it's going to be. So that will be coordinated. And along the lines of the traffic study, the traffic study obviously is an integral part, an important part of the approval of the PRD. But I just want to just remind council that this is not a low-density residential or an agricultural zone right now. It's planned business residential. And if you've gone up Science Park Road at 4:30 in the afternoon in a similar zone, those zones also produce a significant amount of traffic. So we're not dramatically increasing the density, it's just a different type of density that is being proposed here. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
And I want to say that it's not as much fun teasing you about grade issues as it is Mark. So maybe you can pass that on to him?
He'll come next time.
All right.
All right. Anyone else? Additional comments? We good?
No.
All right.
So if I have a question for Lindsay. So the next time that council has a conversation, whether it is prior to the continued public hearings or thereafter, we're going to take the comments that we did receive from council this evening and kind of tease out those concepts a little bit, and bring those back for discussion with council. I mean, that's what I'm hearing that our next steps are going to be in terms of getting these issues back in front of council for further deliberation and discussion. Correct?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. Okay. Old business number 2. 5 minutes? Okay. Yep. We will go ahead and take a 5-minute break.
No, let's stay.
I have my seat back now that Lewis is
We'll
gone?
reconvene
can,
our
if
College
that's-
Township
Aw.
Council regular meeting. Moving right into old business number 2, indoor recreation facilities in general industrial zoning district.
Right, thank you. So a while back, around October, council tasked the planning commission with reviewing the potential of having indoor recreation facilities permitted in the general industrial zoning district. So the planning commission saw this twice. The first time they saw it, they thought, well, if we're including this use, why not include all commercial uses? So we said, well, it didn't say that in the remand, so let's approach council through your liaison and see what they think. So council then, after that discussion, said, stick with the singular use. We're just talking about indoor rec facilities in general industrial right now. So then the next time PC met, they held that discussion with those in mind, that council discussion in mind, and they came to a vote. So 3 members voted to allow the use as a use by right, and then 2 members voted no. And I think that's what you were kind of, someone was getting at that earlier, they saw that, so this is where you're seeing that. During this process, staff presented the remand to them. They saw our zoning analysis that we did, and of course included council suggestions within that remand. One of them was, consider it a conditional use. Usually, well, in the past, it seems our interim zoning changes are conditional uses. But the Planning Commission felt that moving it forward as a use by right and then allowing the process to kind of iron out things like parking and lighting and sidewalks and infrastructure would kind of come with plan submission, staff review, Planning Commission review, and council review. So the PC feels that it should be just a use by right. So for your use within the packet tonight, I have a memorandum just kind of highlighting what the Planning Commission did. I also included the remand that stated 10/10/2024, and then of course the proposed draft ordinance of what it would take to make this change. So making a change to just allow this use simply would be a change to the general industrial list of uses. And it would, that would be it. Also, they considered that the folks who have been requesting this decided that they're not going to be building in the center region anymore and they're going somewhere else. So the pressure from the time kind of came off their shoulders, knowing that they're not going to be redeveloping here. But the realtor I talked to, he said there is a lot of interest in this use in College Township and other townships too, because Harris is also considering the same thing. And actually Center Regional Planning Agency Commission just heard this at their last meeting for Harris Township and recommended that it go through. So that's just some information I wanted to provide to you prior to your discussion tonight. Council did in the remand ask the Planning Commission to give them information by December 31st. So that's one thing we're doing. And in the case you do want to move forward with this tonight, we do have the draft ordinance. So I feel like council has a few things to consider, the use by right as the Planning Commission is recommending. And so I'm here if you want to discuss anything else or have any questions.
Okay, so just to vet this out, right, we had discussion about what everything just discussed and what PC recommendation, and if we were to set a public hearing, it would have to be from that draft ordinance, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I have it noted that if you do want to set a public hearing tonight, set it for February 20th. Because this will have to go in front of CRPC and they don't meet this year until February 6th.
Okay, thanks. Rich, you want to lead us out on this one?
Sure. I appreciate Planning Commission meeting our requested timeline. on this. My only concern is, and staff, correct me, the requirements for the industrial zone versus other zones aren't the same, where we would have this kind of a use, that we currently allow this kind of a use. Is that correct or not?
Well, it's different in zoning, slightly different in zoning, but when it comes to subdivision and land development, it's pretty consistent across
Okay.
zoning districts, the requirements.
But like, let's go sidewalks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sidewalks are or aren't required in the industrial,
Yes, they are required.
on one side.
No, I believe on
They're
two
both
sides.
done.
Yeah, it would be whatever as Lindsay was describing, whatever the underlying subdivision land development regulations dictate. And so I would tend to think that's both sides.
I was just using that as an example, but overall, I have concerns because we're in the middle of the small area plan review and form-based code and everything like that. And we've said we really want a hands-on as we navigate through this. And I think conditional use gives us more of that hands-on than just by right. We don't know what we don't know at this point. And I think the conditional use gives us an opportunity, additional opportunity to review it. I mean, we talked about some things tonight that I think were relevant.
Yeah, and it's a better opportunity for public input as well.
Yes. Yeah. So I have concerns about the use by right versus conditional use. I do think it's a maturing district that, needs to have some other stuff available to it, but not carte blanche. So that's my thoughts.
Susan?
Yes, and so what Rich said, and I think we had the conversation when we sent the remand to council, PC, and it looks like I didn't have a chance to see the meeting, but it looks like there was a discussion and a split decision on this, 3-2. So I think somebody else asked about a 3-2 vote on something. So it sounds like the next step then is to set that public hearing for more discussion on the issue, correct?
No, it would be the public hearing for the ordinance. If we all have a consensus on use by right, we'd set a public hearing for the ordinance change for use by right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to hear the rest of the conversation.
To Rich's point, between conditional and right, why, you said Harris Township heard the committee?
Yeah.
And why were they in favor of approving as is? I'm just curious.
I'm sorry, I can't really.
Okay.
I don't know, and I mean, the CRPC was supportive of the idea.
Okay, CRCP.
Yeah, the Center Regional
And what
Planning.
was their reasoning in supporting, opposed to a conditional use?
Let me think back. I believe it was just to expand the uses and in their industrial district as well, and to allow like incorporating more, rec uses because it's in such a high demand. In areas where there are bigger buildings, higher ceilings, things like that.
Right, and it's interesting that they didn't have a concern of control as to Rich's point, because that's kind of like where I was thinking, like with it being so many unknowns right now, it might seem conditional use might be a better approach. Because, I'm always thinking about liability and all that. So my concern would be not giving up so much control, as Rich so eloquently put that. But I wanted to hear an opposing side as to why they thought. Yeah.
One of the rationales, and I'm speculating, so we'll just leave it at that, is probably because of the difference in what the district is in Harris Township versus what it is here.
Okay.
Placement, proximity to residential, just general age, and also Harris Township isn't going through the effort that College Township is now to basically reshape this larger Dale Summit district. So I think it was probably some combination of that. Again, this is my speculation. Is it's not apples to apples. It's they're the very different scenario in Harris because of different factors, and the elephant in the room really is the work that's happening with form-based code here and that shift in approach to land use.
Yeah, that was definitely part of the conversation. They in the next few months we're going to be analyzing every single use that goes into the Dale Summit area. So they thought about that as well.
Gotcha.
The Harris Township they changed it to what?
They changed.
They added the use.
Yeah, they added the use.
By right.
Okay.
By right. Okay.
All right.
Okay. That's all I have.
They've added or they're looking at adding?
Well, the CRPC step is usually what you do right before you hold the public hearing. So I assume that, assuming they're gonna get there, yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's all I have.
Good. Yeah, I definitely agree with what's been said so far. Me personally, yeah, I mean, I could go either way, but I kind of like the conditional use. I think when we first talked about it, just because, and now even understanding a little bit more today as we vetted out things with 814, I think it does provide an opportunity, one, for public comment and further development of that, if, for lack of a better word, ailing district, if you will. That could take us a step further in the Dale Summit area plan, right? If somebody really wants to be in there, they're going to go through it, or is it going to turn business away? I don't know, right? That's the only concern I'd have the other way, right? If you don't make it a use by right, is it turn business away? For example, like the folks that I think brought it back up to us again, back on the plate, had a pretty short timeline, right? So would they want to go through a conditional use process? I don't know. Yeah. But that's just my other side, flip side of the thing, just to put out there. Eric?
Yeah, I agree with almost everything that's been said so far, and I would say that allowing a development in that may not be well suited for that just because they might decide not to is not necessarily bad planning. So if we don't have the rules in place to effectively mitigate the impact, turning them away is not necessarily bad planning. But I agree with everything that's been said. Lindsay offered 8 keys and for Planning Commission to consider in the discussion. And I was troubled by the fact that really recommending use by right doesn't really address any of those issues. You could make the case that some of them could be addressed during the land development plan phase, but as we saw firsthand tonight, the off-site impacts, which you have identified here in your keys under traffic impacts, event scheduling, and safety concerns, go well beyond the site themselves. There is no way to address them. I shouldn't say there's no way. There's no way to have the developer address them through the land development plan. We, as a township, could go in and build sidewalks and put up streetlights, and that could be one. If you want to go use by right, then the only way I would support use by right is if we're going to go in and build the sidewalks and put the streetlights in and do the things that are necessary to address
Safety.
the issues that you identified in your keys. So that's my answer to, yes, some of them, yes, those issues can be addressed during the land development plan, and that is correct, on site.
On site.
But you're going to be asking people to draw, you're going to be bringing people into these uses deep in that district through narrow streets with no streetlights, a fragmented sidewalk network. It's just not conducive. And then you want to toss in something we always talk about, and Rich hinted at that, somebody hinted at that. There's other zoning districts that allow these already, and that's because they require the sidewalks, they require this, they have that infrastructure in there to support large activities on weekends and nights. This district doesn't. That place is a ghost town at night.
Yeah.
So I would be really hard pressed. We'd have to have another hour or two of discussion to support moving a draft ordinance forward for public hearing that that allows that by right. So it kind of defeats some, you know, without addressing some of these in the ordinance revision. That's what it would take for me. But then you're, you know, that's beyond the scope of, I think, what we had asked the Planning Commission to do. I like conditional use. We saw tonight why it's a value.
I think so. I think it's a valuable tool.
Could we?
Yeah, I was gonna invite, yeah. So, you good? Matt, do you have anything to add?
I probably agree with the conditional use. Couple notes to add, like you said, the two gentlemen are here, I know them very well, but I'm not associated with them. When you're doing youth sports, you might think you have a pretty big timeline, but say between 6 and maybe 14 is only the time that you have, because once they get into the high school, you know, they go hit over to the high school, they go to open gyms for basketball, so that's why those gentlemen, I think, were in a bit of a hurry. And I think their plan maybe was just to they have these baseball travel organizations, just keep passing that along.
And if I could say one more thing in regards to land development plan, that's only if the development trips the threshold for land development plan.
Absolutely.
If they're going in and not changing the footprint of the building, then we got nothing.
They could just move
Yeah.
right in.
We got
That's a
nothing.
great point. Which I think is what they're looking for.
But conditional use would still apply there, right?
If
Or
it's a
wouldn't.
conditional use, they wouldn't be able to just have a change of use to allow the.
That's true.
No
You're
minor,
right.
no minor at the staff level or anything
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's called out as a conditional use,
I was thinking,
recreation activities in the industrial zone, even if it's utilization of an existing facility with no changes, it would be, they'd always have to come to get the zoning permit. The zoning permit always has to reflect change of use. Change of use would then have to be.
That would trigger the.
Conditional use.
Would be a trigger then for the condition.
And that's an important point. And I think we talked a little bit about that early on. I just want to make sure that doesn't get lost in the debate over use by right and conditional.
Yeah, I mean, from a practical standpoint, I mean, while it wouldn't be a land development plan type presentation to the council, I would envision, from an administrative standpoint, I would envision that the zoning officer would inform the applicant that this is a conditional use and that council may wish to impose additional conditions on this permit. I think it would be more of a conversation, frankly, between the zoning officer and the council, probably supplemented by the presence of the applicant. But I think that's how it would be directed back to council in that case.
right, and then so as a use by right, they can just move right in. Yep.
Yeah, they still have to get the change of use, but at that point, it's in the book. It's you know,
You know, like stand on it.
there's nothing more to do.
Okay. Anything else, Matt?
Thanks, Matt. Hey, were the two dissenting votes, did they have anything to do with conditional use versus use of right, or was there other issues?
No, one of the nay votes said that contact them personally for the reason for voting nay, and the other nay vote, they said just didn't have enough time to digest it all.
Right.
So it might, the second one might have been the closest to an abstain.
Yeah.
There was a nay vote.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
I do have one last question, Matt. I apologize.
That's okay.
I didn't do my homework
Gotta
this
get my
time.
steps in.
I didn't watch the meeting, and I would have known this better if I had. So the 3 votes in favor of right by use, what was the most compelling reason?
I'm guessing maybe time. but-
Time in terms of transition time
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and keeping business,
But I'll be
keeping
honest
open
with
for
you,
business?
Going back 2 months,
Okay, that's fair.
I'm a little foggy there.
I appreciate your trying.
Yeah.
I'm a
Now,
little
before
foggy.
Matt goes back,
Okay.
no, just in case there's anybody else that had a question, that's all.
Thank you, Matt.
Oh, hey, Matt, come back.
One more time.
Hey, Matt, do you have any more jokes?
More jokes. All right, so it sounds like it doesn't seem like we're gonna take action to move ahead with the public hearing, right?
Well-
That's what we're hearing.
Well,
right?
not on,
Yeah,
potentially, not on as a
No,
right of use,
this-
but could we amend it? Do we want to get this done?
Yeah,
Question one. Question two, if so, can we amend it to conditional use as opposed to use by right? And then, keep the train moving.
yeah.
Do we want the train to keep moving?
Yeah, I think both of those questions probably need to be answered, but we'll take the low-hanging fruit first. The ordinance that is in the packet this evening, which is at the moment for use by right.
Yeah, very simple, just a change to the table.
So it's a change to the table.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So the mechanics of the change to make this a conditional use are pretty straightforward. So the bigger question is, does council want to do and make this change?
Right. It's an easy mechanical change that could be done easily.
Right.
Yeah, that it's kind of just like a strike here and then insert
Well,
there.
yeah.
And it's still got an approval process that it has to go through.
sure,
So.
sure.
It's,
And if council would have any input on some of the requirements that would fall under a conditional use, like something like, provide lighting or, because we changed and had the multifamily conditional use and, we had a lot of information in there. So you
Yeah.
could put, a few things in, nothing in, a lot of things in. So that's something to consider too.
Well, I think your keys is the starting of that.
Okay.
Because those are the things that we were looking to have addressed either in use by right, and if not, then we would try to address them as part of conditional.
Yeah.
So maybe staff could take a stab at,
We could, or you could kill it.
yeah, I mean, the
So
pressure's off right now as far as,
Well, and let me explain my comment, though. I mean, yes, the pressure is off. There's no imminent reason for us to need to do this. I think it's a legitimate request. We've had this request for many, many years.
and we'll have more.
And we'll continue to have more. In part, and I don't know, some of you were here when we had gone through several of these in a row, kind of meeting after meeting after meeting. It's one of the reasons why we initiated the idea, the concept of form-based code and the pursuit thereof, which is right where we're at the moment. And so I think this becomes almost a use of resources kind of question.
Yeah.
From my perspective. We are, clearly there's a lot of work to do, but we're in the midst of addressing this very issue as part of the form-based code conversation.
Right.
And so I think it's something to consider, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, we can put this on the shelf if I wasn't moved by somebody else's timeline
Sure.
on that. It was more the volume of these requests that we continue to receive. And knowing that we're not filling that zone with those uses, the previous uses, or the current uses. So I was looking beyond that one applicant and everything like that. Part of it is we're still in business, you know, kind of thing, while we're working through the form-based code. But I think we've got all the legwork down. If we wanted to put this on the shelf, and if we need to take it off the shelf and put it into play again.
We wouldn't be starting from scratch.
Correct. So that balances it doesn't need to be done now, and if we get to form-based code, it's probably gonna be done, but if something comes up in the interim.
The only caveat to what I understand that you just said would be the likelihood, the need for it to go back to the planning commission.
All right.
Now, I think if you make a change, planning commission has given you a recommendation. You had provided planning commission with a remand that suggested a different way than was recommended by the planning commission. It's now come back to you. I think at this juncture, you have the ability to direct staff to do this. And there isn't a need, you can, but there isn't a need or a requirement at this point relative to the MPC for this to go back again to the planning commission. If we put this on the shelf,
Then it starts the whole cycle.
I think we have a new cycle, which means it would not necessarily be as timely as what we might otherwise anticipate.
Well, how about, you know, and I really agree with what you said, you know, to meet, because like just kind of bringing it back through the cycle again just kind of seems like what we've done in the past, right? We just kind of like keep putting it back through. What if we just don't, you know, really just general say it's conditional use and that's it, and, you know, move tonight on that instead of saying specifics? That way it just gives us that opportunity. Right, is that something, you know, just in general, we could just say it's a conditional use and be done with it, and then move on. And that way it says we're still open, right, we're open for business, it gives us a stopgap to say, okay, now let's put conditions on it, and here's the conditions if it ever comes up.
Lindsay, educate me or remind me, do we have a specific conditional use section in the ordinance?
Yeah,
We
chapter
do.
87.
Okay.
Chapter 87 has all of our conditional uses and anything that is related to any regulation required.
Okay.
Windmills, gas stations, bigger.
But they are specific to the uses that are allowed within chapter 87.
Yeah, well, the uses are
conditional
allowed
uses.
in, you know, the uses are noted in the tables in
Right.
zoning, but they refer you to chapter 87 for all of the rest.
For
of
more
the-
specific
Yeah, for the
conditions,
yeah.
for the actual conditions. So, no,
No.
I think is the answer.
Without that additional
Right.
information.
Right, you need, in order for it to be a conditional use.
So that's why Lindsay was
Yeah,
asking.
that's exactly
Yeah,
right.
you
We
need
would
the
need,
basis
we
of
would need to
conditions.
identify what those conditions are.
Yeah, and they're kind of set it, I mean, we
They're
really
already-
do have those.
And I'll throw this out there, just for the planning commission, or maybe as an alternate, say we vetted both options. I'm not opposed to use by right if the township wants to invest in the infrastructure improvements that address those keys. Accomplishes the same thing. The difference is we're footing the bill for what needs to be brought up to speed so that they can have that use, versus them making an incremental contribution to what needs to happen.
Yeah, build it, and then they can come and,
I'm not supporting that, but I'm saying,
oh, I'm waiting to see how we get that in the works. Getting all of them.
I'm just saying, this is why we can't support it as a use by right.
Once we
Because
commit to the other side.
we've identified these key safety issues, so if we allow it as use by right, then we have to go in and make all those other improvements on the taxpayer's dime.
Yeah. And, you know, once we hit the new year, we're gonna really hit the ground running with getting back into form-based code. And we are doing it section by section, and once we finish 260, we get into 261, and I think probably 261B or C, where we discuss all the uses that will be permitted in, with the form-based code. It's just something to consider too.
If I may, using the key considerations in Lindsay's memo, just going through the first several of these, I think that you can construct those conditions tonight as just using these.
At least for the public hearing.
Certainly for the public hearing.
Yeah.
So,
I was focusing mostly on the middle ones.
well, just even taking it from the top.
Okay.
Okay. So chapter 87 would say that indoor recreation uses in the industrial zone are permitted. See section blah, blah, blah. Section blah, blah, blah would state the conditions, and the first condition would be, does the desired use align with the Dale Summit transition? Or that's number one. Number two, address or present a plan to address traffic during peak hours and evenings, right? That can be a condition. The next one, submit a plan to discuss and provide for the facilitation and the conduct of large-scale events during evenings and weekends.
Well, and specifically how they're going to be mitigated.
Or,
The
there you
impact's
go,
gonna be
how,
mitigated.
and how, how to mitigate those
And you
issues.
can apply that to safety too.
And the same thing for safety, right? So I think that if you work down through those, you could at least, for the purposes of the public hearing, at least, you could certainly create the conditions that would be potentially the conditional use items.
Right, and then as you see fit, add more if needed.
So I think you do have the option to do that. It has to be more than just say it's conditional use, end of story, but I think that you have the elements here. If you wanted to move this forward, I think that staff would be in a position to be able to extract what would be necessary and what would make sense, at least for the purposes of the public hearing.
Well, we don't forget the regional impact, because we've often talked about devaluing other, show that it doesn't necessarily, that this can't be built in a vacant other zoning district where it's already an allowed use, therefore devaluing that.
Yeah, the planning commission
Because that's
did
what we're
talk about
hearing.
that, yeah.
We're hearing that this is the only place these can be built because of the lot size or the building or whatever. Yeah, I know. That's why we did the vets thing there.
Yeah, oh, okay. I see.
Yeah, that's what yeah, go ahead, please.
Just one other point, if the surrounding municipalities are moving forward with these kind of things, it puts College Township at a competitive disadvantage not to.
I mean, by allowing them in their industrial.
Yes.
So just a quick thumbs up, who's supportive of, if someone wants to craft a motion of setting a public hearing for a conditional use? A quick thumbs up, yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay.
The question is, can we do that with just this general direction to staff? Because we're not really moving, we don't have a ordinance.
Well, I think that we can because we have time. You said that the CRPC, who would need to see this, does not meet until February, right?
And we have until the 20th.
Right, so what I would suggest is that between now and our meeting on January 16th? No, not the 6th, 16th, that we take the comments here from staff, craft a conditional use ordinance for your review on the 16th of January. That's our second meeting in January.
That still meets your timeline for the 20th.
And it still meets the timeline because CRPC isn't meeting. I think that works, and that's what I would recommend.
That's why you're an award-winning manager. I like that recommendation.
I
did too.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. I like that recommendation.
So do I.
Yeah, yeah.
At
Yeah,
10
that way we're
o'clock,
not
I'd like just
trying to.
about any
Yeah,
recommendation.
we're not trying to spin up a motion out of thin air at that night hour. Okay, we're moving on then to NB1.
So NB1 has to do with the recently adopted, or I should say recently signed Act 94 by Governor Shapiro, which amends the second-class township code that adjusts the maximum threshold of supervisor, in our case, council pay. And it also allows specifically for supervisors and councils to be paid per meeting. Apparently, that was a deviation in the original law. In any event, essentially, as you know already, that the second-class township code caps the amount of compensation that an elected body, either supervisors or a council, may receive, and it's all based on the level of population in that particular municipality. So, for a municipality the size of College Township, which is now between 10,000 and 15,000, the current cap is $3,250. That is what each member of council presently receives in the form of compensation. Act 94, given the fact that this has not been revisited for at least 15 years or more, increases the cap. The cap moves under Act 94 from that $3,250 to $5,450. So it's a little over $2,000 increase. The question in front of council this evening is whether or not council would like to address an ordinance that would actually move that cap to the $5,450 level. Understand that no sitting council is able to adjust their own salaries. That said, this would not, if you should adopt this in calendar year 2024, none of this would take effect until the earliest January of 2026. So none of the current council as a group are setting your compensation because there's an election in between now and then. That's a new group of council. This will be pre-decided, if you will, for that incoming council. So while this will not have any immediate effect on supervisor compensation in the short term, as of January of 26, the new caps would apply. So the question really here tonight for council is this something that you wish to consider to do? I would certainly recommend it. In College Township, a community of our size and the amount and demands that are made of our council in terms of the work that each of you put in, not only on township business specifically, but the additional responsibilities that each of you have relative to the Center Region Council of Governments. My recommendation to you would be absolutely remove the caps, set the rate, and in 2026, that new rate takes effect. So that would be my 2 cents on this particular issue. What needs to be decided tonight is if, in fact, you choose to move in that direction, that will necessitate the advertisement, which we believe we can have published in the paper in time for this ordinance to be considered yet in 2024 at our already scheduled special meeting on the 30th of December.
So the action you're asking for is to move the ordinance to advertisement?
Right.
Okay. Any questions or discussion around what the manager just put out?
Do I understand then that only those who start their term in 2026 would this apply? We have members now that are on, have 3 years left.
The other three would apply in 2028.
Good catch. Yes.
So we would have members for 2 years getting paid a different
Rate.
rate.
There's no way around, really.
Yeah, that's,
They'll never
it's
be the
a, it's
same.
a step, and
Yep.
yeah, yes, you are correct.
Okay. I'm just curious.
So, am I correct, we're only making 2,500?
Yeah, we're like
Yes,
2
we're-
steps down.
yeah.
Yeah,
We're not even
we're
at
in
the
the
cap.
band below that.
We're not even in the, yeah.
Oh, well, that's correct, because the
Yeah.
2020 census put us over.
Right.
For the
That's
first time
correct.
ever.
Right, right, so we were down under that. So, just easy numbers, in 2026, it's $5,900. In 2028, it's an additional $8,850, for a total of $14,750.
Oh, in
when
total.
When fully implemented, if fully implemented from the current cap, or from our current pay to the proposed new cap. So it's a
14,000 a year.
so it's, less than $15,000 a year.
Total.
Total.
Right.
Yes, when fully implemented, and it won't be fully implemented until 2028. And, who knows what's gonna happen between now and 2028. But the other part, this doesn't even take into consideration that the center region and their duties with the COG. That's just anybody, and everything. So, yeah.
But if you were to look at just us, right, what is our proposed budget right now? How much money, 15,000 out of,
About 16 million.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Just to qualify it a little bit more.
So if the manager feels he can fit it in his budget.
I got a couple of years to work.
And see, exactly. We give you a target out there, way out there and everything. It might even get Mr. Bernier to read,
Look at it as an incentive,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's an incentive, yeah.
Well, that decision will come from
Your accountant.
With your account,
She's the one who determines the value of my time.
counselor.
Your financial manager.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other further questions? Anybody?
Is there a consensus to advertise?
Do you need a
Do
motion?
we need a motion?
I would
think so, yeah.
prefer a motion.
Yeah, does anybody wish to make a motion to advertise ordinance, what is it, O-dash?
The only thing, we're all comfortable with the recommendation of the new cap.
At the new cap,
At the new cap, not some lesser amount.
somewhere in between now.
Yeah.
Right.
And keeping it at quarterly payments.
And then
Yes.
the only other question we ask is it the annual salary or is it the by meeting? That's another condition of the act.
Yeah, you have the ability under 94 to do it on a per meeting basis. I wouldn't recommend that.
No, I just want to know if we have to address that,
I mean,
That's because that wouldn't
You
incorporate
indicated
COG
state
meetings.
quarterly.
right,
And that wouldn't incorporate COG meetings either.
right.
The ordinance still says quarterly,
Yeah, quarterly installments.
so if we move forward with that, then we don't change anything.
Okay.
Good with that? Anybody wish to make a motion to advertise ordinance O-24-04? Compensation of council.
I'll move to authorize the manager to advertise ordinance 0-24-04 for potential compensation of council for consideration of council's, in time for council to consider it at its December 30th meeting. And here it's only 7 days for this particular
Yeah,
ordinance?
this ordinance is a 7-day.
That's
so
different.
And no public hearing.
Yeah, there isn't a public hearing. But it does need to be advertised at least 7 days prior to
Yeah.
the action. And we're anticipating being able, I'm looking at Sharon, 'cause she's gonna help me make sure we get this done tomorrow, but we can have it in the paper on Sunday. There's gonna be a number of advertisements in the CDT this coming Sunday edition. This will be one of those.
Does anybody wish to second that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any further discussion on that motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, none opposed. All right, we go. New business number 2, which we added, is a discussion only on the idea of a 1-year contribution to the health care for the township employees.
Real quick before I yield the floor to Susan. This is a memorandum form of an email that each of you received within the last few days that discussed this particular, oh, I think that I may have given you the wrong one. It doesn't matter. Oh, that one's mine. That's mine. Okay. So just to make the conversation easier for you folks this evening. There you go. Thanks. I'm sorry, Susan. I yield my time.
So then we'll just add this to the record then, your memo.
Yeah, that would be fine. So just by way of recollection or refreshing, during the budget workshop meeting that we held on December 2nd, we had a conversation relative to the 3-year steep increases that we have had relative to our health insurance renewals. We also discussed the impact that that has on the employee contributions toward what the employees pay toward their own health care costs. I have some concerns relative to the overall amount of those increases that our employees are absorbing for healthcare costs. And the one thing that we had discussed is the potential for a 1-year reprieve of the increases to the employees' healthcare costs by an additional contribution from council. So that kind of sets the stage. That was what this memo refers to. There's some actual numbers that are in here to help frame the reference. But you know, from my perspective, for a relatively modest 1-year commitment on the part of council, I think that we can address a number of the issues that we have with employee costs, but also commit to a more permanent fix in calendar year 2025 and going forward for future budget years.
Okay. Susan, did you want to open up any comments?
I'm going to be really honest. My brain is a little bit fried right now, so I may not be as articulate as I'd hope to be to ask to bring this to council. I do agree with Adam. I want to open this up for discussion. We touched on this at our budget workshop. My concerns are that the cost of the healthcare has exceeded the inflation rate. I know you had replied in the email about the Social Security COLA, which next year will be about 2.5%. We're looking at reducing that premium by about 3.5%. So I think there's some opportunity to do two things: look at the actual percentage and maybe make it align with
That's what I was hinting at.
with the COLA, which is 2.5%, which brings us down to, I think I did a rich $16,000 from, I believe, about $22,000. And I think it also speaks to the value we see in the employees and recognizing that healthcare costs will be a problem, but there has to be a long-term solution. I like that this is a 1-year proposal, but I think 30% over 3 years is a burden, and certainly for our lower graded employees, this may represent more than 9% of their gross, which is considered, we're talking about workforce housing, 30% or more than 30% is housing burdened, and more than 9% is health burdened. So that's a concern for me as well.
And we don't have a sliding scale based on.
Not at the moment.
No. Okay. And I think those are all long-term solutions we'll have to talk about, because if we're pooling risk in a small group of people, one person will drive the cost up. So we lost the premium for the low cost for many years, and I mean, I can speak from the healthcare side, just looking at I think I sent a couple of people a Wall Street Journal article this morning. Even if we keep risk low in the employees, the actual dollar cost of everything is going to increase astronomically. So I'm particularly sensitive to this because I deal with this a lot. So I appreciate council's being willing to bring this to the table and discuss tonight. And I think it's an important issue for our employees.
Okay. Tracy? Anything?
No, not right now.
So and was not prepared to do the math, but if we did nothing, what would be the monthly premium?
That's, if you flip the page.
Yeah, it's on the other side? Yep. All right, never mind. I'm prepared to flip a page and read.
Page has been flipped.
All right, thanks. I can
Top
do
right,
that.
Top left.
All right. Okay. Oh, wow.
Oh, wow, yeah.
All right. Okay. That was my only question or comment. Eric?
Couple things. These things, I worry about these kinds of things because I lived in a bargaining unit environment and I'm sensitive to precedent. I'm also, we brought this up before, not everybody has health insurance, right? And so not every employee is affected by that. So those are the things that concern me. That doesn't mean I don't support doing something. I just don't have a good, I don't have a way to address it that makes me comfortable. I'm not uncomfortable addressing it in theory. I just have a hard time wrapping my arms around something that is fair and not, doesn't set a bad precedent for the future. I tossed out the COLA increase simply as, you know, Adam's dealing with round numbers here, 3.5%, 5%.
Right.
I tossed out the COLA increase because that was one way we could take some subjectivity out of this and say, for this year, we're going to hold health premium increases to the COLA. I mean, it was just a attempted stab at some rationalization and taking some of the subjectivity out of it. I support our employees. We heard tonight from our solicitor, and anybody would have said, everybody would have said the same thing. You know, we have great staff. That's why our zoning hearing presentation lasted 5 minutes.
Not even.
And I want to do something. I want to hear something from somebody that makes me feel more comfortable how we do it. That's why I tossed out the COLA idea.
I think, I too think precedent is important. And in thinking about this, do employees who opt out of the insurance coverage here, do they get a payout for that? So is that a way to equitably distribute? You know, do we somehow change that? Yeah, exactly. And recognizing, I think as we establish a precedent, we're also in a relatively unprecedented situation. So I think that is something we need to think about. But it was that the opt-out, whatever the opt-out bonuses or whatever you call it, there's some opportunity there maybe to make that more equitable across everyone as a one-time. But we do need to come up with a long-term solution because this will, I mean, we talked about this at COG at the budget discussions that, you know, the cost of healthcare is going to become astronomical.
And that's part of my concern. If we don't, we've set a precedent that's going to be difficult. I'm not saying it's not justified, but it's going to be difficult to dial back from.
That's fair.
So it almost, to me, has to come hand in hand with a commitment to come up with something long-term.
Yeah, and I'm willing to help with that. But, yeah. And I think it's in keeping with what we're looking at in terms of valuing the employees. As you said, you know, the staff are valuable. They save money in many ways by saving us the cost of having to pay for legal counsel when we go to court. So.
I was just going to add, I do think that there are some solid rational ways that we can address this in 2025. I think the biggest issue that we faced here with this particular issue was one of timing, that we weren't really able to fully vet some of it, whether it's a sliding scale or other solutions that are out there. We really didn't have the opportunity from a time perspective to be able to do that, and to have those conversations with council. So I do believe that there are ways for us to appropriately address this, both from the township employee standpoint, but also from a budgetary standpoint on behalf of the overall township budget. So I'm pretty confident about our ability to be able to come up with a solution. My only concern with respect to the pegging of the COLA, the numbers that we're dealing with are really not impacted by the COLA. So the percent, yeah.
And that wasn't my intent.
And so, but let me finish. I recognize that the solution or the suggestion that has been made here, in essence, is somewhat arbitrary. And I acknowledge that. And I don't know that there is a magic bullet that in some way allows us to make a more rational kind of a decision. I think this, because of the way that we apportion our cost at the moment, I just don't know that there is a number out there that we can peg to something that will actually address the concern, or your concern, about being, using something that's entirely rational and defensible.
Did you have any comments, Rich?
Yes. I am not concerned about the precedent side of this. This is an action of council. If we were in the union, there would be certainly more concerns of that. The other thing that we haven't talked about yet is that our current premiums are being impacted by recent health events amongst our staff, and over time those will work through. But the reality is the current model isn't sustainable. So using 2025 as a transition year to get to a more sustainable, while also allowing the census information to work through, I think is prudent. And then at the end of the day, looking at the dollars, I don't know any better investment than we can make.
All right, so we would like to probably bring this back, is what I'm hearing, as an agenda item sooner rather than later, where we can take action.
Well, I think there's...
We need to.
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think the decision needs to be made about what, if anything, that we do in 2025 as a whole. But during 2025, we absolutely make the commitment to resolving the model that we're using.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would first say I support doing a one-time in 2025, and I would support what is proposed from the manager.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Support that.
I totally support that.
So our next action then is to move it as old business to our next
Yeah,
meeting?
if in fact that there is a consensus, this would basically necessitate a modification to the proposed budget. If in fact there is a consensus to move forward in that direction as was proposed in this memo, then what would happen is the necessary adjustments to the existing fund balance would be made in anticipation of the final budget approval, and the resolutions that identify the total value of the budget and the total value of the expenditures would be modified to reflect this change. So that would be the action that would be prepared for council's consideration after the public hearing on the budget at the meeting on December 30th.
So the action is that we would be amending the budget.
Yeah, well, you're amending the draft budget,
Yep.
yes,
Yep.
which you're certainly entitled to do.
Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah, could we also think about what we could do for folks who aren't on the...
Yeah,
Well,
that's a great
the-
point.
the-
The opt-out is a function of whatever we decide with this as well. That, you know, an opt-out person would,
No, that's not the way that our policy is written.
okay.
The policy is written, and my recollection of the policy is it's 20% of the premium is what is made available to those that opt out.
20% of the total premium or the employee's portion of the premium?
Well, no, the total premium.
Okay.
So in other words, the total premium, we'll just use we'll use an
4,000.
individual.
Okay.
So roughly $1,600 monthly,
Right.
okay? 20% of that is the opt-out reimbursement, if you will,
Right.
to an individual that does not
So
utilize.
that goes up as the premium goes up?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, no, I'm sorry, I'm used to an environment where the organizations set that opt-out number, and we had control over it.
Well,
You're saying
we
it all-
set the percentage.
We set the percent.
I'm used to an
okay.
environment where opt-out, you didn't get anything.
Right.
You didn't get an incentive at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the needs,
Just that
Right.
percentage.
it is, it is. And so what we've done in my world is we've adjusted the two numbers, the opt-out percentage and the employee payment percentage in conjunction, so that the people that aren't on the program aren't penalized for not being on the program.
So do you change the percentage equally? The opt-out?
No,
You have a formula.
some guy built a spreadsheet.
You have a formula,
Some guy
okay.
built a
Some
spreadsheet
guy.
and put the number in
Let me
it,
guess.
and then just spits it out and says, this is what this should be, and this is what this should be.
So yeah, we could ensure that we're spreading the benefit across all employees, that everybody's seeing some. I mean, what I understand you is they're gonna see some benefit anyways with the increase in the premium.
Yeah, I have no concern over our opt-outs.
Okay.
I
I didn't
think
realize
they're-
it went up.
Yeah, our
premium goes up.
control, if you will, our variable is what that percentage is. And at the moment, it's 20% of the premium. And so that is, as the premium goes up, that opt-out.
So every $100 the premium goes up, they get $20 a month
Right,
more in their opt-out.
that's correct.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah, no,
We
it
can still
has-
adjust that, we can still
Yeah,
adjust
it has
that.
to be in some degree of balance, and there's different theories on how. to
Right, and there's
approach that.
different reasons why you set your opt-out as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, in
Yep.
terms of, are you trying to entice people?
Yes.
If they have other options, to
Yes.
pursue those other options.
Yep.
And anyway, but
I'm just
none
gonna
of
throw
this
it
has
at,
changed much for a very, very, very long time.
right, that doesn't make it good, but
Right.
it can also be, to the opt-out, it can be a recruiting tool
Sure.
if somebody has a good answer over here, and then they can utilize the opt-out to their benefit, to their family's benefit, so, but yeah.
Okay.
So I think we have consensus to make the modification to the budget. We'll have those numbers and those modifications reflected appropriately for the meeting on the 30th.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you very
Have
much.
we set a time yet for that meeting on the 30th?
12 noon.
Oh, no.
Another nooner.
Yeah, on the council staff, other matters, yes, the 30th will be at 12 noon. All right. Any other council staff or other
For a
matters?
friend.
I have one more thing.
Hey,
I
we're
just
getting
want
lunch.
to say thank you. Amy's not here tonight, but thank you to the Parks and Rec Committee and to Amy and the Public Works staff. The Fieldstone Park is in.
Yay.
And I'll send pictures. It's quite lovely. They did a great job, and they did it when it was freezing cold out there. So I don't know if the people that were out there were the team from the company that owned, that did it, but whoever did it did a great job.
I know our guys helped to finish it off, so.
And there was thank you from the residents of Fieldstone too.
Nice.
Great.
Nice.
I'll send you guys pictures. Sorry Amy wasn't here.
All right,
let
it's
her know you
everyone's
said it.
favorite agenda item of the night.
Move that we
I'm done.
adjourn the meeting.
All right, I'll second that. We're adjourned.